Hi guys, welcome back to Regaining the Balance. We're doing the part two of the audiobook of Journey of Souls, Case Studies of Life Between Lives. So without further ado, we're just going to get right into this thing. Looks like the stream's working good. I'm going to have my chat off to the side in case something might, for whatever reason, the stream I did yesterday, my OBS kept telling me that I wasn't being connected or whatever else, but it seems that it worked just fine. So let me know if you guys see any or hear any weird stuff while I'm doing the stream here. So let's get to the book. All right, looks like everything's good there. All right, so we are at chapter 5, Orientation. After those entities who meet us during our homecoming have dispersed, we are ready to be taken to a space of healing. This will be followed by another stop involving the soul's reorientation to a spiritual environment. In this place, we are often examined by our guide. Just a second. I tend to call the cosmology of all spiritual locations as places or spaces, simply for convenient identification because we are dealing with a non-physical universe. The similarity of descriptions among clients of what they do as souls at the next two combined stops is remarkable. Although they do have different names for them, I hear such terms as chambers, travel berths, interspace stopover zones, but the most common is, quote, the place of healing, unquote. I think of the healing station as a field hospital or a MASH unit for damaged souls coming off Earth battlefields. I have selected a rather advanced male subject who has been through this revitalization process many times to describe the nature of this next stop. In case 11 here, Dr. N, after you leave the friends who greeted you following your death, where does your soul go next in the spirit world? Subject, I am alone for a while, moving through vast distances. Dr. N, then what happens to you? Subject, I am being guided by a force that I can't see into a more enclosed space and opening into a place of pure energy. Dr. N, what is this area like? Subject, for me it's the vessel of healing. Dr. N, give me as much detail as possible about what you experience here. Subject, I am propelled in and I see a bright warm beam. It reaches out to me as a stream of liquid energy. There is a vapor-like steam swirling around me at first, then gently touching my soul as if it were alive. Then it is absorbed into me as fire and I am bathed and cleansed from my hurts. Dr. N, is someone bathing you or is this light beam enveloping you from out of nowhere? Subject, I am alone, but it is directed. My essence is being bathed, restoring me after my exposure to Earth. Dr. N, I have heard this place is similar to taking a refreshing shower after a hard day's work. Subject laughs. After a lifetime of work. It's better and you don't get wet either. Dr. N, you also don't have a physical body anymore, so how can this energy shower heal a soul? Subject, by reaching into my being. I'm so tired from my last life and with the body I had. Dr. N, are you saying the ravages of physical body and the human mind leaves an emotional mark on the soul after death? Subject, God, yes. My very expression, who I am as a being, was affected by the brain and body I occupied. Dr. N, even though you are now separated from that body forever? Subject, each body leaves an imprint on you, at least for a while. There are some bodies I have had that I can never get away from altogether. Even though you are free of them, you keep some of the outstanding memories of your bodies in certain lives. Dr. N, okay, now I want you to finish with your shower of healing and tell me what you feel. Subject, I'm suspended in the light. It permeates through my soul, washing out most of the negative viruses. It allows me to let go of the bonds of my last life, bringing about my transformation so I can become whole again. Dr. N, what does the shower have? Does the shower have the same effect upon everyone? Subject, pause. When I was younger and less experienced, I came here more damaged. The energy here seemed less effective because I didn't know how to use it to completely purge the negativity. I carried old wounds with me longer despite the healing energy. Dr. N, I think I understand. So what do you do now? Subject, when I'm restored, I leave here and go to a quiet place to talk to my guide. This place I have come to call the shower of healing is only a prelude for the rehabilitation of returning souls. The orientation stage, which immediately follows, especially with younger souls, involves a substantial counseling session with one's guide. The newly refreshed soul arrives at this station to undergo a debriefing of the life just ended. Orientation is also designed as an intake interview to provide further emotional release and readjustment back into the spirit world. People in hypnosis who discuss the type of counseling which goes on during orientation say their guides are gentle but probing. Imagine your favorite elementary school teacher and you have the idea. Think of a firm but concerned entity who knows all about your learning habits, your strong and weak points, your fears, who is always ready to work with you as long as you continue to try. When you don't, everything remains stationary in your development. Nothing can be hidden by students from their spiritual teachers. No subterfuge or deception exists in a telepathic world. There are a multitude of differences in orientation scenes depending on the soul's individual makeup and their state of mind after the life just ended. Souls report the intensity of their first conference can vary after each life. The case below gives a brief example of an orientation scene which attests to the desire of higher forces to bring comfort to the returning soul. Case 12. Subject. At the center of this place, I found my bedroom where I was so happy as a child. I see my rose-covered wallpaper and four-poster bed with squeaky springs under a thick pink quilt made for me by my grandmother. My grandmother and I used to have heart-to-heart chats when I was troubled, and she is here, too, just sitting on the edge of my bed with my favorite stuffed animals around her waiting for me. Her wrinkled face is full of love, as always. After a while, I see she is actually my guide, uh, Amyphus. I talked to Amyphus about the sad and happy times of the life I had finished. I know I had made mistakes, but she is so kind to me. We laugh and cry together while I reminisce. Then we discuss all the things I didn't do that I might have done with my life. But in the end, it's okay. She knows I must rest in this beautiful world. I'm going to relax. I don't care if I ever go back to Earth again because my real home is here. Apparently, the more advanced souls do not require any orientation at this stage. This does not mean that the 10% of my clients in the category just sail right by their guides with a wave upon their return from Earth. Everybody is held accountable for their past lives. Performance is judged upon how each individual interpreted and acted upon their life roles. Intake interviews for the advanced souls are conducted with master teachers later. The less experienced entities are usually given special attention by counselors because the abrupt transition from physical to a spiritual form is more difficult for them. Need to take a quick sip. The next case I have selected has a more in-depth therapeutic spiritual orientation. The exploration of attitudes and feelings with a view to reorienting future behavior is typical of guides. The client in case 13 is a strong, imposing 32-year-old woman of above average height and weight. Dressed in jeans, boots, and loose-fitting sweatshirt, Hester arrived at my office one day in a state of agitation. Her presenting problems fell into three parts. She was dissatisfied with her life as a successful real estate broker, as being too materialistic and unfulfilling. Hester also felt she lacked feminine sexuality. She mentioned having a closet full of beautiful clothes which were, quote, hateful to wear, unquote. This client then told me how she had easily manipulated men all her life because, quote, there is a male aggression about me which also makes me feel incomplete as a woman, unquote. As a young girl, she avoided dolls and wearing dresses because she was more interested in competitive sports with boys. Her masculine feelings had not changed with age, although she had found a man who became her husband because he accepted her dominance in their relationship. Hester said she enjoyed sex with him as long as she was in physical control and that she found this exciting. In addition, my client complained of headaches on the right side of her head above the ear, which, after extensive medical examinations, doctors had attributed to stress. During our session, I learned the subject had experienced a recent series of male lives, culminating with a short life as a prosecuting attorney called Ross Felden in the state of Oklahoma during the 1880s. As Ross, my client had committed suicide at age 33 in a hotel room by shooting himself in the head. Ross, in a despair over the direction his life had taken as a courtroom prosecutor. Regression therapists call this, quote, heightened response, unquote, being in a state of revivification. Revivification? Nope. Revive. I'm sorry. So being in the state of revivification means to give new life, as opposed to the alternative trance state where subjects are observer participants. Case 13. Sorry, I butchered that part, guys. Dr. N, now that you have left the shower of healing, where are you going? A subject apprehensively, to see my advisor. Dr. N, and who is that? Subject pauses. Dees. No, his name is Clodes. Dr. N, did you talk to Clodes when you entered the spirit world? Subject: I wasn't ready yet. I just wanted to see my parents. Dr. N: Why are you going to see Clodies now? Subject: I am going to have to make some kind of accounting of myself. We go through this after all of my lives, but this time I'm really in the soup. Dr. N: Why? Because I killed myself. Dr. N: When a person kills himself on Earth, does this mean they receive some sort of punishment as a spirit? Subject: No, no, there's no such thing here as punishment. That's an Earth condition. Clodies will be disappointed that I bailed out early and didn't have the courage to face my difficulties. By choosing to die as I did means I have to come back later and deal with the same thing all over again in a different life. I just wasted a lot of time by checking out early. No, this is important. If anybody out there is listening to this book and thinks about, checking themselves out early, you can't run away from this thing apparently. So keep that in mind. Dr. N: So no one will condemn you for committing suicide? Subject reflects for a moment. Well, my friends won't give me any pats on the back either. I feel sadness at what I did. Note: This is the usual spiritual attitude towards suicide, but I want to add that those who escape from chronic physical pain or almost total incapacity on earth by killing themselves feel no remorse as souls. Their guides and friends also have a more accepting view towards this motivation for suicide. Dr. N: All right, let's proceed into your conference with Clodies. First, describe your surroundings as you enter this space to see your advisor. Subject: I go in a room with walls. Laughs. Oh, it's the Buckhorn. Dr. N: What's that? Subject: A great cattleman's bar in Oklahoma. I was happy as a patron there. Friendly atmosphere, beautiful wood paneling, stuffed leather chairs. Pause. I see Clodies sitting in one of the tables waiting for me. Now we're going to talk. Dr. N: How do you account for an Oklahoma bar in the spirit world? Subject: It's one of the nice things they do for you to ease your mind, but that's where it ends. Then, with a deep sigh, this talk is not going to be like a party at the bar. Dr. N: You sound a little depressed at the prospect of an intimate conversation with your guide about your last life. Subject defensively: Because I blew it. I have to see him to explain why things didn't work out. Life is so hard. I try to do it right, but Dr. N: Do what right? Subject with anguish: I had an agreement with Clodies to work on setting goals and then following through. He had expectations for me as Ross. Damn, now I have to face him with this. Dr. N: You don't feel you met the contract you had with your advisor about lessons to be learned as Ross? Subject impatiently: No, I was terrible. And of course, I'll have to do it all over again. We never seem to get it perfect. He pauses. For now, if it weren't for Earth's beauty, the birds, flowers, trees, I would never go back. It's too much trouble. Dr. N: I can see you are upset, but don't you think? Subject breaks in with agitation: You can't get away with a thing either. Uh, Everybody here knows you so well. There is nothing I can keep from Clodies. Dr. N: I want you to take a deep breath and go further into the Buckhorn bar and tell me what you do. Subject gulps and squares her shoulders. I float in and sit down across from Clodies at a round table near the front of the bar. Dr. N: Now that you're near Clodies, do you think he's upset at you or upset as you are over your past life? Let me bring that back. Dr. N: Now that you are near Clodies, do you think he is as upset as you over this past life? Subject: No, I'm more upset with myself over what I did and didn't do, and he knows that. Advisors can be displeased, but they don't humiliate us. They're too superior for that. The counseling input of a directive guide gives the healing process of our soul a boost during orientation, but that does not mean the defensive barriers to progress are completely removed. The painful emotional memories from our past do not die as easily as our bodies. Hester must see her negative past life script as Ross, clearly without distorted perceptions. Recreating spiritual orientation scenes during hypnosis assists me as a therapist. I found the techniques of psychodramatic role playing to be useful in exposing feelings and old beliefs related to current behavior. Case 13 had a quite long orientation, which I have condensed. At this juncture of the case, I shifted my questioning to involve the subject's guide. As the proceedings unfold with Ross Felden's life, I will take the role of a third-party intermediary between Ross and Clodies. Within this counseling mode, I also want to initiate a role transference where Hester Ross will speak the thoughts of Clodies. The integration of a subject with their guide is a means of eliciting assistance from these higher entities and bringing problems into sharper focus. I sometimes sense even my own guide is directing me in these sessions. I am cautious about summoning up guides without good cause. Facilitating communication directly with a client's guide always has an uncertain outcome. If my intrusion is clumsy or unnecessary, guides will block a subject's response by silence or use metaphoric language, which is obscure. I have had guides speak through a subject's vocal cords in raspy tones which are so discordant I can hardly understand the responses to the question. When subject talk for their guides rather than guides speaking for themselves through the subject, usually the cadence of the speech is not as broken. In this case, Clodies comes through Hester Ross easily and allows me some latitude in working with this client. Dr. N. Ross, we both need to understand what is happening psychologically to you right from the start of your orientation with Clodies. I want you to assist me. Are you willing to do this? Subject. Yes, I am. Dr. N. Good. And now you're going to be able to do something unusual. On the count of three, you have the ability to assume the dual roles of Clodies and yourself. The abilities will enable you to speak to me about your thoughts and those of your guide as well. It will seem that you will actually become your guide when I question you. Are you ready? Subject with hesitation. I think so. Dr. N. Rapidly. 1, 2, 3. I place my palm on the subject's forehead to stimulate the transference. Now be Clodies speaking his thoughts through you. You are sitting at the table across the soul of Ross Felden. What do you say to him? Quickly, I want the subject to react without thinking critically about the difficulty of my command. Subject reacts slowly, speaking as his own guide. You know, you could have done better. Dr. N. Quickly now, be Ross Felden again. Move to the other side of the table and answer Clodies. Subject. I tried, but I fell short of the goal. Dr. N. Switch places again. Become the voice of Clodies' thoughts and answer Ross quickly. Subject. If you could change anything about your life, what would it be? Dr. N. Respond as Ross. Subject. Not to be corrupted by my power and money. Dr. N. Answer is Clodies. Subject. Did you let these things detract from your original commitment? Dr. N. I lower my voice. You are doing fine. Keep switching back and forth at the table. Now answer your guide's question. Subject. I want to belong, to feel important in the community, to rise above others and be admired for my strength. Dr. N. Respond as Clodies. Subject. Especially by women. I observe you try to dominate them sexually as well, making conquests without attachments. Dr. N. Speak as Ross. Subject. Yes, that's true. Shakes head from side to side. I don't have to explain. You know everything anyways. Dr. N. Responds as Clodies. Subject. Oh, but you do. You must bring your self-awareness to bear on these matters. Dr. N. Answers as Ross. Subject. Defiantly. If I hadn't exerted power over these people, they would have controlled me. Dr. N. Responds as Clodies. Subject. This lacks merit and was unworthy of you. What you became is not how you started. We chose your parents carefully. Note, the Felden family were farmers of modest means who displayed honesty, forbearance, and sacrificed much to Ross, so Ross could study law. Dr. N. Answer as Ross. Subject in a rush. Yes, I know, they brought me up to be idealistic, to help the little guy. And I wanted this too, but it didn't work out for me. Or didn't work for me. You saw what happened. I was in debt when I began as a lawyer, ineffective, of no consequence. I didn't want to be poor anymore, defending people who couldn't pay me. I hate the farm, the pigs, and the cows. I like being around substantial people. When I joined the establishment as a prosecutor, I had the idea of reforming the system and helping farm people. It was the system that was wrong. Dr. N. Responded as Clodies. Subject. Ah, you were corrupted by the system. Explain this to me. Dr. N. Answers Ross. Subject. Hotly. People had to pay fines they couldn't afford. Others I sent to jail because of offenses they didn't mean to commit. Others I had hung. Voice breaks. I became a legal killer. Dr. N. Respond as Clodies. Subject. Why did you feel responsible for prosecuting criminals who were guilty of hurting others? Dr. N. Answers as Ross. Subject. Few of those, most were, just ordinary people like my parents who got caught up in the system, needing money to survive, and there were those who were sick in the head. Dr. N. Responded as Clodies. Subject. What about the victims of the people you prosecuted? Didn't you choose a life of law to help society and to make the farm and the town safer with justice? Dr. N. Answers Ross. Subject loudly. Don't you see? It didn't work for me. I was turned into a murderer by a primitive society. Dr. N. Responds as Clodies. Subject. And so you murdered yourself. Dr. N. Responds as Ross. Subject. I got off track. I couldn't go back to being a nobody, and I couldn't go forward. Subject is speaking as Clodies. Too easily you became a participant with those whose motivations were for personal gain and notoriety. This was not you. Why did you hide from yourself? And then subject answers as himself. As Ross, with anger, why didn't you help me more when I started as a public defender? And then the subject responds as Clodies, what benefit do you get from thinking I should pick you up at every turn? Dr. N, I ask Hester to respond as Ross, but when she remains silent after the last question, I step in. Ross, if I may interrupt, I believe Clodies is inquiring into the payoff for you from both the pain you feel now and the strokes you get from blaming him over your last life. Subject pauses, answers as Ross, or the subject, wanting sympathy, I guess. Dr. N, okay, respond as Clodies to this thought. Subject responds as Clodies, very slowly, what more would you have me do? You didn't reach far enough inside yourself. You guys hearing this? Place thoughts in your mind of temperance, moderation, responsibility, original goals your parents love you, ignored, your parents love, you ignored these thoughts and were stubborn to alternative action. Ross responds without my comment. I know I missed the signs you set up. I wasted opportunities. I was afraid. Subject responds as Clodies. What do you value most about who you are? Dr. N, answer your guide. Subject responds, that I have the desire to change things on Earth. I started with wanting to make a difference for the people of Earth. Dr. N respond as Clodies. Subject responding as Clodies, you left that assignment early, and now I see you missing opportunities again, being afraid to take risks, taking paths which damage you, trying to become someone who is not you, and there is sadness again. Recreating the orientation stage does produce abrupt transitions during my hypnosis sessions. While Case 13 is speaking as Clodies, notice how her responses take on a more lucid and decisive quality, which is different from either my client, Hester, or her former self as Ross. I'm not always successful with my subjects translating their guide's comments so insightfully in former spiritual orientations. Nevertheless, past life memories often spill over into contemporary problems in whatever spiritual setting is selected. Whether my subjects or her guide actually directed the conversation in the Buckhorn bar scene while I move the time frame around does not matter to me. After all, Ross Feldon as a person is dead. But Hester is caught in the same quagmire, and I wanted to do what I can to break this destructive pattern of behavior. I spent a few minutes reviewing with the subject what her guide has indicated about lack of self-concept. There it is again, guys. Self-awareness, self-concepts. You hear me talk about this all the time. Alienation and lost values. After asking Clodies for his continued assistance, I close the orientation scene and immediately take Hester to a later spiritual stage just before her rebirth today. Dr. N, with all the knowledge of who you are as Ross and having a greater understanding of your real spiritual identity after your stay in the spirit world, why did you choose your current body? Subject, I chose to be a woman so people would not feel intimidated by me. Dr. N, really? Then why did you take the body of such a strong, forceful woman in the 20th century? Subject, they won't see a prosecuting attorney dressed in black in a courtroom this time. This time I'm a surprise package. Dr. N, a surprise package? What does that mean? Subject, as a woman, I knew I would be less intimidating to men. I can catch them off guard and scare them to death. Dr. N, what kind of men? Subject, the big guys, the power structure in society. Catch them when they're lulled into a false sense of security because I'm a woman. Dr. N, catch them and do what? Subject, drives her fist into the left palm. Nail him! To save the little guy from the sharks who want to eat up all the small fish in the world. Dr. N, I move my subject into the present while she remains in the superconscious state. Let me understand your reason for choosing to be a woman in this life. You wanted to help the same sort of people who you were unable to help as a man in your previous life. Is this correct? Subject, sadly, yeah, but it's not the best way. It's not working out for me like I thought. I'm still too strong and macho. Every energy is pouring out of me in the wrong direction. Dr. N, what wrong direction? Subject, wistfully, I'm doing it again, misusing people. I chose the body of a woman who is intimidating to men, and I don't feel like a woman. Dr. N, give me an example. Subject, sexually and in business. I'm in the power game again, pushing aside principles, getting off track as before, as Ross. This time I manipulated real estate deals. I'm too interested in acquiring money. I want status. Dr. N, and how does this hurt you, Hester? Subject, the influence of money and position is a drug to me, as it was in my last life. My being a woman now has done nothing to change my desire to control people. So stupid. Dr. N, Then do you think your motivations were wrong in choosing to be a female? Subject: Yes, I do feel more natural living as a man, but I thought as a woman this time around I would be more subtle. I wanted this chance to try again in a different sex, and Clody's let me take it. Client slumps down in her chair. What a blunder. Doctor N: Don't you think you're being a little hard on yourself, Hester? I have the sense you also chose to be a woman because you wanted a woman's insight and intuition to give you a different perspective to tackle your lessons. You have a masculine energy, but if you can have masculine energy, if you want to call it that, and still be feminine. Before finishing the case, I should touch on the issue of homosexuality. Most of my subjects select the bodies of one gender over another 75% of the time. This pattern is true of all but the advanced souls who maintain more of a balance in choosing to be men and women. A gender preference by a majority of earthbound souls does not mean they are unhappy the other 25% of the time as males or females. Hester is not necessarily gay or I think he means to be bisexual, because of her body choice. Homosexuals may or may not be comfortable with their anatomy as humans. When I do have a client who is gay, they often ask if their homosexuality is a result of choosing to be, quote, the wrong sex, unquote, in this life. When their sessions are over, this inquiry is usually answered. Regardless of the circumstances which lead souls to make gender choices, this decision was made before arriving on Earth. Sometimes I find that gay people have chosen in advance in their current lives to experiment with sex that was seldom used in former lives. Being gay carries a sexual stigma in our society, which presents a more difficult road in life. When this road is chosen by one of my clients, it can usually be traced to a karmic need to accelerate personal understanding of the complex differences in gender identity as related to certain events in their past. Case 13 chose to be a woman in this life to try and get over the stumbling blocks experienced as Ross Felden. Would Hester have benefited from knowing her about her past as Ross from birth rather than having to wait over 30 years to undergo hypnosis? Having no conscious memory of our former existences is called amnesia. This human condition is perplexing to people attracted to reincarnation. Why should we have to grope around in life trying to figure out who we are and what we are supposed to do, and wondering if some spiritual divinity really cares about us? I close my session with this woman by asking her about her amnesia. Dr. N: Why do you think you had no conscious memory about your life as Ross Felden? Subject: When we chose the body and make a plan before coming back to Earth, there is an agreement with our advisors. Dr. N: An agreement? About what? We agree not to remember our other lives. Dr. N: Why? Subject: Learning from a blank slate is better than knowing in advance what could happen to you because of what you did before. Dr. N: But wouldn't knowing about your past life mistakes be valuable in avoiding the same pitfalls in life? Subject: If people knew all about their past, many might pay too much attention to it rather than trying out new approaches to the same problem. The new life must be taken seriously. I think this is an important point here as well. Here, I think people definitely get wrapped up in the wrong thing, and they forget what the whole what the purpose in life is. Continuing, Dr. N: Are there any other reasons? Subject: Pause. Without having old memories, our advisors say there is less preoccupation for trying to avenge the past, to get even for the wrongs done to you. Dr. N: Well, it seems to me that so far this has been part of the motivation and conduct in your life as Hester. Subject forcefully: That's why I came to you. Excuse me. Dr. N: And do you still think a total blackout of our eternal spiritual life on Earth is essential to progress? Subject: Normally, yes, but it's not a total blackout. We get flashes from dreams. During times of crisis, people have an inner knowing of what direction to take when it's necessary, and sometimes your friends can fudge a little. Dr. N: By friends, you mean entities from the spirit world? Subject: Uh-huh. They give you hints by flashing ideas. I've done it. Dr. N: Nevertheless, you had to come to me to unlock your conscious amnesia. Subject: Pause. We have the capacity to know when it is necessary. I was ready for change when I heard about you. Clody's allowed me to see the past with you because it was to my benefit. Dr. N: Otherwise, your amnesia would have remained intact? Subject: Yes, that would have meant I wasn't supposed to know certain things yet. In my opinion, when clients are unable to go into hypnosis at any given time, or if they have only sketchy memories in trance, there is a reason for this blockage. This does not mean these people have no past memories, that they are not ready to have them exposed. My client knew something was hindering her growth and wanted it revealed. The superconscious identity of the soul houses our continuous memory, including goals. When the time in our lives is appropriate, we must harmonize human material needs with our soul's purpose for being. I try to take a common sense approach in bringing past and present experiences to alignment. Our eternal identity never leaves us alone in the bodies we choose, despite our current status. In reflection, meditation, or prayer, right, the memories of who we are let me go back. In reflection, meditation, or prayer, the memories of who we really are do filter down to us in selective thought each day. In small intuitive ways, through the cloud of amnesia, we are given the justification of our being, clues, the justification of our being. After desensitizing the source of her headaches, I completed my session with Hester by reinforcing her choice to be a woman for reasons other than intimidating men. I gave her permission to lower her defenses a little and be less aggressive. We discussed options for restructuring occupational goals towards the helping professionals and possibilities of volunteer service work. She was finally able to see her life today as a great opportunity for learning rather than a failure of gender choice. After a case is completed, I never cease to admire the brutal honesty of souls. When a soul has led a productive life, beneficial to themselves and those around them, I notice they return to the spirit world with enthusiasm. However, when subjects like Case 13 report they wasted a past life, especially from early suicide, then they describe going back rather dejected. When orientation is upsetting to a subject, I find an underlying reason is the abruptness with which the soul is once again in full possession of all knowledge. After physical death and unencumbered by a human body, the soul has a sudden influx of perception. The stupid things we did in life hit us hard in orientation. I see more relaxation and greater clarity of thought move my subjects further into the spirit world. Souls are created in a positive matrix of such love and wisdom that when a soul starts to come to a planet like Earth and join the physical beings who have evolved from a primitive state, the violence is a shock. Humans have the raw, negative emotions of anger and hate as an outgrowth of their fear and pain connected with survival going back to the Stone Age. Both positive and negative emotions are mixed between soul and host for their mutual benefit. If a soul only knew love and peace, it would gain no insight and never truly appreciate the value of these positive feelings. The test of reincarnation for a soul coming to Earth is the conquering of fear in a human body. A soul grows by trying to overcome all negative emotions connected to fear through perseverance. In many lifetimes, often returning to the spirit world bruised or hurt, as in Case 13 indicated. Some of the negativity can be retained even in the spirit world and may reappear in another life with a new body. On the other hand, there is a trade-off. It's in joy and unabashed pleasure that the true nature of an individual soul is revealed on Earth in the face of a happy human being. Orientation conferences with our guides allow us to begin the long process of self-evaluation between lives. Soon we will have another conference, this time with more master beings in attendance. In the last chapter, I refer to the ancient Egyptian tradition of newly deceased souls being taken to a hall of judgment to account for their past life. In one form or another, the concept of a torturous courtroom trial awaited us right after death has been part of a religious belief system of many cultures. Occasionally, a susceptible individual in a traumatic situation will say they had an out-of-body experience with nightmarish visions of being taken by frightening specters into an afterlife of darkness where they were sentenced in front of demonic judges. In these cases, I suspect a strong preconditioned belief of hell, a system of hell. I would agree. In the quiet, relaxing state of hypnosis with continuity on all mental levels, my subjects report that the initial orientation sessions with their guides prepare them to go before a panel of superior beings. However, the words courtroom and trial are not used to describe these proceedings. A number of my cases have called these wise beings directors and even judges, but most refer to them as a council of masters or elders. This board of review is generally composed of between 3 and 7 members, and since soul appears, isn't that funny? 3 and 7, huh? And since souls appear before them after arriving at their home base, I will go into this conference in more detail at the end of the next chapter. All soul evaluation conferences, be they with our guides, peers, or a panel of masters, have one thing in common. The feedback and past life analysis we receive in terms of judgment is based upon the original intent of our choice choices as much as the actions of a lifetime. Our motivations are questioned and criticized, but not condemned in such a way as to make us suffer. As I explained in Chapter 4, this does not mean souls are exonerated for their acts which harmed others simply because they are sorry. Karmic payment will come in a future life. I have been told that our spiritual masters constantly remind us that because the human brain does not have an innate moral sense of ethics, conscience is the soul's responsibility. Very important. Nevertheless, there is overwhelming forgiveness in the spirit world. This world is ageless, and so too are our learning tasks. We will be given other chances in our struggle for growth. When the initial conferences with our guide is over, we leave the place of orientation and join a coordinated flow of activity involving the transit of enormous numbers of other souls into a kind of central receiving station. All right, and we got chapter 6. I have to go and throw a piece of wood in my fire. So just give me a quick second. I will be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. Let me just make sure everything's working good here. Sounds good, everything else? Yep. All right, so let's get back to the reading here. Bring the mic close. Take a sip. Okay, so chapter 6, transition. All souls, regardless of experience. Let me just do this here. All souls, regardless of experience, eventually arrive at a central point in the spirit world, which I call the staging area. I have said there are variations in the speed of soul movement right after death, depending upon spiritual maturity. Once past the orientation stage, there seems to be no further travel detours for anyone entering this space of the spirit world. Apparently, large numbers of returning souls are conveyed in a spiritual form of mass transit. Sometimes souls are escorted by their guides to this area. I find this practice is especially true for the younger souls. Others are directed through by an unseen force which pulls them into the staging area and then beyond to waiting entities. From what I am able to determine, accompaniment by other entities depends upon the volition of one's guide. In most cases, haste is not an issue, but souls do not dawdle. Souls do not dawdle along on this leg of their journey. The feelings we have along this path depend on our state of mind after each life. The assembly and transfer of souls really involves two phases. The staging area is not an encampment space. Spirits are brought in, collected, and then projected out to their proper final destinations. When I hear accounts of this particular junction, I visualize myself walking with large numbers of travelers through the central terminal of a metropolitan airport, which has the capacity to fly all of us out in any direction. One of my clients described the staging area as resembling the hub of a great wagon wheel, where we are transported from a center along the spokes to our designated places. My subjects say this region appears to them as having a large number of unacquainted spirits moving in and out of the hub in an efficient manner with no congestion. Another person called this area, quote, the Los Angeles freeway without gridlock, unquote. There may be other similar wheel hubs with freeway type on and off ramps in the spirit world, but each client considers their own route to and from the center to be the only one. The observations I hear about the nature of the spirit world when entering the staging area have definitely changed from those first impressions of layering and foggy stratification. It is as if the soul is now traveling through the loosely wound arms of a mighty galactic cloud into a more unified celestial field. While their spirits hover in the open area arena of the staging area, preparing for further transportation out to prescribed spaces, I enjoyed listening to the excitement in the voices of my subjects. They are dazzled by an eternal world spread out before them and believe that somewhere within lies the nucleus of creation. When they look at the fully open canopy around them, subjects will state that the spirit world appears to be of a varied luminescence. I hear nothing about the inky blackness we associate with deep space. The gathering of souls that clients see in the foreground in this amphitheater appear as myriads of sharp starlights all along in different directions. Some move fast, while others drift. The more distant energy concentrations have been pictured as, quote, islands of misty veils, unquote. I am told the most outstanding characteristic of the spirit world is a continuous feeling of a powerful mental force directing everything in uncanny harmony. Sounds great. People say this is a place of pure thought. Thought takes many forms. It is at this vantage point in their return that souls begin to anticipate meeting others who wait for them. A few of these companions may have already been seen at the gateway, but most have not. Without exception, souls who wish to contact each other, especially when on the move, do so by just thinking of the entity they want. Suddenly, the individual called will appear in the soul mind of the traveler. These telepathic communications, by the energy of all spiritual entities, allow for a non visual affinity, while two energy forms who actually come near one another provide a more direct connection. There is uniformity in the accounts of my subjects as to their manner of spiritual travel, routes, and destinations, although what they see along the way is distinctive with each person. I searched through my case files to find a subject whose experience along this route to an ultimate spiritual destination was both descriptive and yet representative of what many others have told me. I selected an insightful 41-year-old graphic designer with a mature soul. This man's soul had traveled over this course many times between a long span of lives. Case 14. Dr. N. You are now ready to begin the final portion of your homeward journey towards the place where your soul belongs in the spirit world. On the count of three, all the details of this final leg of your travels will become clear to you. It will be easy for you to report on everything you see because you are familiar with this route. Are you ready? Subject, yes. Dr. N, raising my voice to a commanding tone. 1, we are getting started. 2, your soul has now moved out of the area of orientation. 3, quickly, what is your first impression? Subject, distances are unlimited. Endless space, forever. Dr. N, so are you telling me the spirit world is endless? Subject, long pause. To be honest, from where I'm floating, it looks endless. But when I begin to really move, it changes. Dr. N, changes how? Subject, well, everything remains formless. But when I am gliding faster, I see I'm moving around inside a gigantic bowl turned upside down. I don't know where the rims of the bowl are, or even if any exist. Dr. N, then movement gives you the sense of a spherical spirit world. Subject, yes, but it's only a feeling of enclosed uniformity when I am moving rapidly. Dr. N, why does rapid movement, your speed, give you the feeling of being in a bowl? Long pause. It's strange, although everything appears to go on straight when my soul is drifting, that changes to a feeling of roundness when I'm moving fast on a line of contact. Dr. N, what do you mean by a line of contact? Subject, towards a specific destination. Dr. N, how does moving with speed on a given line of travel change your observational perception of the spirit world to a feeling it is around? It is round. Subject, because the speed, the lines seem to bend. They curve in a more obvious direction for me and give me less freedom of movement. Note, other subjects who are also disposed towards linear description speak of traveling along directional directional lines which have the spatial properties of a grid system. One person called them, quote, vibrational strings, unquote. This is very interesting because this is very quantum physics as well. Just like the space around the sun actually bends because of the magnetic effect of the sun itself. And then vibrational strings may be something like string theory, but I digress. Dr. N, by less freedom, do you mean less personal control? Subject, yes. Can you more precisely describe the movement of your soul along these curving contact lines? Subject, It's just more purposeful. When my soul is being directed someplace on a line, it's like I'm in a current of white water, only not as thick as water, because the current is lighter than air. Dr. N. Then, in this spiritual atmosphere, you don't have the sense of density such as in water. Subject: No, I don't. But what I'm trying to say is I'm being carried along as if I were in a current underwater. Subject: or Dr. N. Why do you think this is so? Subject: Well, it's as if we are all swimming, being carried along in a swift current which we can't control, under somebody's direction up and down from each other in space, and nothing solid around us. Dr. N. Do you see other souls traveling in a purposeful way above and below you? Subject: Yes, it's as if we start in a stream and then all of us returning from death are pulled into a great river together. Dr. N. When do the numbers of returning souls seem the highest to you? Subject: When the rivers converge into... I can't describe it. Dr. N. Please try. Subject: Pause. We are gathered into a sea where all of us swirl around in a slow motion. Then I feel as though I'm being pulled away into a small tributary again, and it's quieter, further from the thoughts of so many minds going to the ones I know. Dr. N. Later in your normal travels as a soul, is it the same as being propelled around in streams and rivers as you have just described? Subject: No, not at all. This is different. We are like salmon going up to spawn, returning home. Once we get there, we are not pushed about this way. Then we can drift. Dr. N. Who is doing the pushing while you are being taken home? Subject: Higher entities, the ones in charge of our movements to get us home. Dr. N. Entities such as your guide? Subject: Above him, I think. Dr. N. What else are you feeling at this moment? Subject: Peace. There's such peace you never want to leave again. Dr. N. Anything more? Subject: Oh, I have some anticipation too, while moving slowly with the energy current. Dr. N. All right, now I want you to continue to move further along with the current of energy, closer to the area where you were supposed to go. Look around carefully and tell me what you see. Subject: I see a variety of lights in patches, separated from each other by galleries. Dr. N. By galleries, do you mean a series of enclosures? Subject: More like a long corridor, bulging out in places, stretching out away from me into the distance. Dr. N. And the lights? Subject: They are people, the souls of people within the bulging galleries reflecting light outwards to me. That's what I'm seeing, patches of lights bobbing around. Dr. N. Are these clusters of people structurally separated from each other in the bulges along the corridor? Subject: No, there are no walls here. Nothing is structural with angles and corners. It's hard for me to explain exactly. Dr. N. You're doing fine. Now, I want you to tell me what separates the light clusters from each other along the corridors you are describing. Subject: The people are divided by thin, wispy filaments, making the light milky like transparency of frosted glass. There is an incandescent glow from their energy as I pass by. Dr. N. How do you see individual souls within the clusters? Subject: Pause. As light dots, I see masses of dots hanging in clumps as hanging grapes all lit up. Dr. N. Do these clumps represent various groups of soul energy masses with space between them? Subject: Yes, they are separated into small groups. I'm going into my own clump. Dr. N. What else do you feel about them as you pass by on the way to your cluster? Subject: I can feel their thoughts reaching out, so varied, but together too. Such harmony, but... And he stops. Dr. N. Go on. I don't know the ones I'm passing now. Doesn't matter. Dr. N. Okay, let's pass on by these clusters which seem to bulge out along the corridor. Give me an example of what the whole thing looks like to you to you from a distance. Subject laughs. A long glowworm. Its sides bulging in and out. The movement is rhythmic. Dr. N. You mean the corridor itself appears to move? Subject: Yes, parts of it swaying as a ribbon in the breeze while I'm going further away. Dr. N. Continue floating and tell me what happens to you next. Subject: Pause. I'm at the edge of another corridor. I'm slowing down. Subject: Why? Subject grows excited because... Oh, good. I'm coming in towards the site where my friends are attached. Dr. N. And how do you feel at this moment? Subject: Fantastic. There's a familiar pulling of minds reaching out to me. I'm catching the tail of their kite, joining them in thought. I'm home. Dr. N. Is your particular cluster group of friends isolated from the other groups of souls living in other corridors? Subject: No one is really isolated, although some of the younger ones may think so. I've been around a long time, though, and I have a lot of connections, said with modest confidence. Dr. N. So you felt connections with these other corridors, even when with spirits in them you may not know from past experience? Subject: I do, because of the connections I have had. There is a oneness here. When you are moving around as a spirit, what is the major difference in your interactions with other souls compared to being in human form on Earth? Subject. There, here, no one is a stranger. There is a total lack of hostility towards anyone. Dr. N, you mean every spirit is friendly to every other spirit, regardless of prior associations in many settings? Subject. That's right, and it's more than just being friendly. Dr. N, in what way? We recognize a universal bond between us, which makes us all the same. Yep. There is no suspicion towards each other. Yeah, this is the part of what meditation and self-realization will bring you to this conclusion. Continuing, Dr. N, how does this attitude manifest itself between souls who first meet? Subject, by complete openness and acceptance. Dr. N, living on Earth must be difficult for souls then. Subject, it is, for the newer ones especially, because they go to Earth expecting to be treated fairly. When they aren't, it's a shock. For some, it takes quite a few lives to get used to the Earth body. Dr. N, and if the newer souls are struggling with these Earth conditions, are they less efficient than when working within the human mind? Subject, I would have to say yes, because the brain drives a lot of fear and violence into our souls. It's hard for us, but that's why we come to Earth, to overcome. Dr. N, in your opinion, might the newer souls tend to be more fragile and in need of group support upon returning to their cluster? Subject, that's absolutely true. We all want to return home. Will you let me stop talking now so I can meet with my friends? Continuing, I have touched, let's see here. Oops. There we go. I have touched on the commonality of word usage by different clients to describe spiritual phenomena. Case 14 offers us a few more. One person's, quote, glowworms bulging out of places, unquote, is another, quote, floating trail of balloons, quote. A description about clumps of huge translucent bulbs in one case becomes, quote, giant bunches of transparent bubbles, unquote, from someone else mentally returning to the spirit world. I regularly hear such water words as currents and streams used to explain a flowing directional movement, whereas skyward, like cloud, denotes a freedom of motion associated with drifting. Visual images which call up expressions of energy, mass, and group clusters to indicate souls themselves were especially popular. I have adopted some of this spiritual language myself. At the final debarkation zone for the incoming soul, waiting cluster groups of familiar entities may be large or small, depending upon the soul development level and other factors which I will take up as we get a little further along. By way of comparison with case 14, the next case demonstrates a more insular perception of the spirit world from a soul with less maturity. In case 15, the transition of this soul from the staging area to her home cluster is fairly rapid in her mind. The case is informative because it represents attributes of propriety felt by the soul to a designated space, as well as a deference towards those who manage the system. Because this subject is less experienced and a bit edgy over what she sees as a need for conformity, we are given another interpretation of spiritual guidelines for group placement. Case 15. Dr. N, I want to talk to you about your trip into the place where you normally stay in the spirit world. Your soul is now moving towards this destination. Explain what you see and feel. Subject, nervously, I'm going outward somehow. Dr. N, outward? Subject, puzzled. I'm floating along in a chain of some kind. It's as though I'm weaving through a series of connecting links, a foggy maze. Then it opens up. Oh, Dr. N, what is it? Subject, with awe, I have come into a grand arena. I see many others crisscrossing around me. Subject grows uncomfortable. Dr. N, just relax. You're in the staging area now. Do you see your guide? Subject with hesitation. Yes, nearby. Otherwise, I would be lost. It's so vast. Dr. N, I place my hand on the subject's forehead. Continue to relax and remember you have been here before. Although everything may seem new to you, what do you do now? Subject, I'm carried forward rapidly, straight past others. Then I'm in an empty space, open. Dr. N, does this void mean everything is black around you? Subject, it's never black here. The light just contrasts to darker shades because of speed. When I slow down, things get brighter. Others confirm this observation. Dr. N, continue on and report back to me what you see next. Subject, after a while, I see nests of people. Dr. N, you mean groups of people? Subject, yes. Like hives. I see them as bunches of moving lights. Fireflies. Dr. N, all right, keep moving and tell me what you feel. Subject, warmth, friendship, empathy. It's dreamy. It's dreamy? Dr. N, what is it? I have slowed away I've slowed way down. Things are different. Subject, or Dr. N. How? Subject, more clearly defined. I know this place. Dr. N. Have you reached your own Hive cluster group? Subject, long pause. Not yet, I guess. Dr. N. Just look about you and report back to me exactly what you see and feel. Subject begins to tremble. There are bunches of people together off in the distance, but there, Dr. N. What do you see? Subject, fearfully, people I know, some of my family, off in the distance, but with anguish, I don't seem to be able to reach them. Dr. N, why? Subject, in tearful bewilderment, I don't know. God, don't they know I'm here? Subject begins to struggle in her chair and then extends her arm and open hand at my office wall. I can't reach my father. Note, I briefly stopped my questioning. This client's father had a great influence in her most immediate past life, and she needs additional calming techniques. I also decided to reinforce her protective shield before continuing. Dr. N, what do you think is the reason your father is off in the distance so you can't reach him? Subject. During a long pause, I used the time to dry subject's face, which has become wet with tears and perspiration. I don't know. Dr. N, I place my hand on the subject's forehead and command, connect with your father now. Subject. After a pause, the subject relaxes. It's okay. He's telling me to be patient and everything will become clear to me. I want to go over there and be near him. Dr. N. And what does he tell you about that? Subject. Sadly, he says that he can always be in my mind if I need him there, and I will learn to do this better. Think telepathically. But he has to stay where he is. Dr. N. What do you think is the basic reason for your father remaining in his other place? Subject. Tearfully. He does not belong in my hive. Dr. N. Anything else? Subject. The directors, they don't. Crying again. I'm not sure. No. So normally I try to avoid too much intervention when subjects are describing their spiritual transitions. In this case, my client is confused and disoriented, so I offer a little guidance of my own. Dr. N, let's analyze why you can't reach your father's position right now. Could this separation be the result of higher entities believing this is a time for your individual reflection on your part and that you should associate only with other souls at your own level of development? Subject. Subject is more restored. Yes. Those messages are coming through. I have to work things out for myself, with others like me. The directors encourage us, and my father is helping me understand too. Dr. N, are you satisfied with this procedure? Subject, pause. Yes. Dr. N, all right, please continue with your passage from the moment you see some of your family in the distance. What happens next? Subject, well, I'm still slowing down, moving gradually. I'm being taken along a course I've been on before. I'm passing some other bunches of people, group clusters. Then I stop. Note, the final transit inward is especially important for the younger souls. One client, upon awakening, described this scene as giving him the sense he was arriving back home at twilight after a long trip away. Having passed from the countryside into his town, he finally reached the proper street. The front windows of his neighbor's house were lit, and he could see people inside as he drove slowly past before reaching the driveway of his own home. Although people in trance may use words as clumps and hives to describe how their home spaces look from a distance, this view becomes more individualistic once they go into each cluster. Then the subject's spiritual surroundings are associated with towns, schools, and other living areas identified with earthly landmarks of security and pleasure. Dr. N, now that you are stationary, what are your impressions? Subject, it's large. Activity. There are a lot of people in the vicinity. Some are familiar to me, others are not. Dr. N, can we get a little closer to all of them? Subject, abruptly, my subject raises her voice with indignation. You don't understand. I don't go over there. Points a finger towards my office wall. Dr. N, what's the problem? Subject, I'm not supposed to. You can't just go off anywhere. Dr. N, but you've reached your destination. Subject, it doesn't matter. I don't go over there. Against points a finger at the at her mental picture. Dr. N, does this tie in with the message you received about your father? Subject, yes, it does. Dr. N, are you saying to me your soul energy cannot arbitrarily float anywhere such outside your group? Subject, pointing outwards, they are not in my group over there. Dr. N, define what you mean by over there. Subject, in a grave tone of voice, those others nearby, that is their place. Points down to the floor. This is our place. We are here. Nods head to confirm her statement. Dr. N, who are they? Subjects, well, the others, of course, people not in my group, in a burst of nervous laughter. Oh, look, my own people. It's wonderful to see them again. They are coming towards me. Dr. N, I act as though I am hearing this information for the first time to encourage spontaneous answers. Really? Does this sound this sounds wonderful. Are these the same people who were involved with your past life? Subject, More than one life, I can tell you, with pride. These are my people. Dr. N. These people are entities or members of your own group? Subject. Of course, yes. I've been with them for so long. Oh, it's fun seeing them all again. Subject is overjoyed, and I give her a few moments with this picture. Dr. N. I see quite a change in your understanding. In just a short time we have just arrived, since we have arrived here. Look off into the distance at the others around this place. What is it like where they live? Subject agitated. I don't want to know. That's their business. Can't you see? I'm not attached to them. I'm too busy with the people I'm supposed to be with here. People I know and love. Dr. N. I do see, but a few minutes ago you were quite distressed at not being able to get close to your father. Subject. I know he has his own gathering place with people. Dr. N. Why didn't you know that when we arrived here? Subject. I'm not sure. I admit it was a shock at first. Now I know the way things are. It's all coming back to me. Dr. N. Why wasn't your guide around to explain all this to you before you saw your father? Subject. Long pause. I don't know. Dr. N. Probably other people you have known, loved ones, and loved besides your father are also in these groups. Are you saying you have no contact with them now that you are in your proper place in the spirit world? Subject. Upset with me. No. I have contact with my mind. Why are you being so difficult? I'm supposed to stay here. Dr. N. I prod the subject once more to gain additional information. And you don't just drift over to those other groups for visits? Subject. No, you don't do that. You don't go into other groups and interfere with their energy. Dr. N. But mental contact offers no interference with their energy? Subject. At the right time when they are free to do this with me. Dr. N. So, what you're telling me is that everyone here is located in their own group spaces, and you don't go wandering around visiting or making too much mental contact at wrong times. Subject, calming down. Yes, they are in their own spaces with instruction going on. It's the directors who move around mostly. Dr. N. Thank you for clearing all that up for me. You want me to know that you and your group friends are especially careful about infringing upon other spaces? Subject, that's right. At least that's the way things are around my space, Dr. N. And you don't feel confined by this custom. Subject, oh no. There are great expanses of space and such a sense of freedom here as long as we pay attention to the rules. Subject, Dr. N. And what if you don't? Who decides what is the proper location for each group of souls? Subject, pause. The teachers help us. Otherwise, we would be lost. Dr. N. It would seem to me you were lost when we first arrived here. Subject, with uncertainty. I didn't connect. I wasn't mentally in tune. I messed up. I don't think you realize how big it is around here. Dr. N. Looking around you at all the occupied spaces, isn't the spirit world crowded with souls? Subject laughs. Sometimes we do get lost. That's our own fault. This place is big. That's why it never gets crowded. The two cases in this chapter represent different reactions from a beginner and a more advanced soul recalling the final phase of the return passage back to the spirit world. Every participant has their own interpretation of the panoramic view from the staging area to the terminus of their cluster group. Some of my subjects find the transition from the gateway to group placement to be so rapid that they need time to adjust upon arrival. When recalling their memories between homecoming and placement, my subjects sometimes express concerns that an important individual was not present in light form or did not communicate with them telepathically. Often this is a parent or spouse in the life just completed. By the end of the transition stage, the reason usually becomes evident. Frequently, it has to do with embodiment. We have seen how the average returning soul is overwhelmed by pleasure. Familiar beings are clustered together in undulating masses of bright light. On occasion, resonating musical sounds with specific chords guide the incoming traveler. One subject remarked, quote, as I come near my place, there is a monotone of many voices sounding the letter ah, like ah, from my recognition, and I can see them all vibrating fast as warm, bright energy, and I know these are the disembodied ones right now, unquote. Isn't that interesting? That's very close to Om. What this means is that those souls who are currently incarnated in one or more bodies at the moment may not be actively engaged with welcoming anybody back. After another subject explained, quote, it is as if they are sleeping on autopilot. We always know who is out and who is in, unquote. Those souls who are not totally discarnated radiate a dim light with low pulsating energy patterns and don't seem to communicate much with anyone. Even so, these souls are able to greet the returning soul in a quiet fashion within the group setting. The sense of barrier between various groups, as experienced by Case 15, has different versions among my subjects. Depending upon the age of the soul, I will have another perspective about mobility in the next case. The average soul with a great deal of basic work to do describes the separation of their group from others as similar to being in different classrooms in the same schoolhouse. I have also had clients who felt they were entirely separated in their own schoolhouse. The analogy of spiritual schools directed by teacher guides is used so often by people under hypnosis that it becomes a habit for me to use the same terminology. As I mentioned earlier, other souls arrive back into their soul groups. They are summoned to appear before a council of elders. While the council is not prosecutorial, they do engage in direct examination of a soul's activities before returning them to their groups. It is not unusual for my subjects to have some difficulty providing me with full details of what transpires at these hearings, and I am sure these blocks are intentional. Here is a report from one case. Quote, after I met with my friends, my guide Veronica, subject's younger teacher, takes me to another place to meet with my panel of elders. She's at my side as an interpreter for what I don't understand and to provide support for explanations of my conduct in the last life. At times, she speaks on my behalf as a kind of defense advocate, but Quazel, subject's senior guide who arrived before Veronica, carries the most weight with the panel. There are always the same 6 elders in front of me who wear long white robes. Their faces are kindly and they evaluate my perceptions of the life I have just lived and how I could have done better with my talents and what I did that was beneficial. I am freely allowed to express my frustrations and desires. All the elders are familiar to me, especially 2 of them who address me more than the others and who look younger than the rest. I think I can distinguish appearances which are male or female. Each has a special aspect in the way they question me, but they are honest and truthful, and I am always treated fairly. I can hide nothing from them, but sometimes I get lost when their thoughts are transmitted back and forth in rapid communication between them. When it's more than I can handle, Veronica translates what they are saying about me, although I have the feeling she does not tell me everything. Before I return to Earth, they will want to see me a second time. Souls consider themselves having finally arrived home when they rejoin familiar classmates in group settings. Their attendance here with certain other souls does resemble an education placement system in form and function. The criteria for group admission is based upon knowledge and a given developmental level. As in any classroom situation, some students connect well with teachers and others less so. The next chapter will examine the sorting out process for soul groupings and how souls view themselves in their respective spiritual locations, which is a fascinating section. I'm going to need to take a bit of a longer break this time. I need to use the restroom and a couple other things, so I will be back in about 5 minutes or so. See you in 5. I'll give you some music to listen to. Okay, and we're back. And off the break screen. There we go. Okay, so chapter 7. Let's see if you guys are still with me. All right. Chapter 7 here. Placement. My impression of the people who believe we do have a soul is that they imagine all souls are probably mixed into one great congregation of space. Many of my subjects believe this too before their sessions begin. After awakening, it's no wonder they express surprise with the knowledge that everyone has a designated place in the spirit world. When I began to study life in the spirit world with people under hypnosis, I was unprepared to hear about the existence of organized soul support groups. I had pictured spirits just floating around aimlessly by themselves after leaving Earth. Group placement is determined by soul level. After physical death, a soul's journey back home ends with a debarkation into the space reserved for their own colony, as long as they are not a very young soul or isolated for other reasons, as mentioned in Chapter 4. The souls, the souls represented in these cluster groups are intimate old friends who have about the same awareness level. Let me take a quick sip here. When people in trance speak of being part of a soul cluster group, they are talking about a small primary unit of entities who have direct and frequent contact, such as we would see in human family. Peer members have a sensitivity to each other which is far beyond our conception on Earth. Secondary groups of souls are arranged in the form of a community support group, which is much less intimate with one another. Larger secondary groups of entities are made up of giant sets of primary clusters as lily pads in one pond. Spiritual ponds appear to be endless. Within these ponds, I have never heard of a secondary group estimated at less than 1,000 souls. The many primary group clusters which make up one secondary group seem to have sporadic relationships or no contact at all between clusters. It is rare for me to find souls involved with each other in any meaningful way who are members of two different secondary groups, because the numbers of souls is so great it is not necessary. The smaller subgroup primary clusters vary in number, containing anywhere from 3 to 25 souls. I am told the average assemblage is around 15, which is called the inner circle. Any working contact between members of different cluster groups is governed by the lessons to be learned during an incarnation. This may be due to a past life connection or the particular identity traits of the souls involved. Soul acquaintanceships between members of different cluster groups usually involve peripheral roles in life on Earth. An example would be a high school classmate who was once a close friend, but who you now see only as at class reunions. Members of the same cluster group are closely united for all eternity. These tightly knit clusters are often composed of like-minded souls with common objectives which they continually work out with each other. Usually they choose lives together as relatives and close friends during their incarnations on Earth. It is much more common for me to find a subject's brother or sister from former lives in the same cluster group rather than souls who have been their parents. Parents can meet us at the gateway to the spirit worlds after a death on Earth, but we may not see much of their souls in the spirit world. This circumstance exists not for reasons of maturity, since a parent soul could be less developed than their human offspring. Rather, it is more a question of social learning between siblings who are contemporary in one time frame. Although parents are a child's primary identification figures for both good and bad karmic effects, it is frequently our relationship with spouses, brothers, sisters, and selected close friends over a whole lifetime that most influence personal growth. This takes nothing away from the importance of parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents who serve us in different ways from another generation. Figures 1 and 2, pages 89 and 90, represent a random spiritual setting of souls. In figure 1, blah, 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 blah. Well, they're not showing us these figures, so we'll look at those later. Some souls in primary groups 9 and 10 could also work together. The younger souls with secondary groups A and B and C would probably have little or no contact with each other in the spirit world or on Earth. Close association between souls depend on their assigned proximity to one another in cluster groups, while there is a similarity of knowledge and affinity brought about by shared earthly experiences. The next case offers us an account of what it is like coming back to one's cluster group after physical death. It's case 16. Dr. N. Once you leave the staging area and have arrived in the spiritual space where you belong, what do you do then? I need to adjust this mic. Hold on. Subject, I go to school with my friends. Dr. N, you mean you're in some kind of spiritual classroom? Subject, yes, we are study. Where we study. Sorry. Dr. N, I want you to take me through this school from the time of your arrival so I can appreciate what is happening to you. Start by telling me what you see from the outside. Subject, with no hesitation, I see a perfectly square Greek temple with large sculptured columns. Very beautiful. I recognize it because this is where I return after each cycle. Life, that is. Dr. N, what is a classical Greek temple doing in the spirit world? Subject shrugs. I don't know why it appears to me that way, except it seems natural since my lives in Greece. Dr. N. All right, let's continue. Does anyone come to meet you? Subject smiles broadly. My teacher, Carla. Uh, Dr. N. How does she appear to you? Subject confidently. I see her coming out of the entrance of the temple towards me as a goddess, tall, wearing long flowing robes. One shoulder is bare. Her hair is piled up and fastened with a gold clasp. She reaches out to me. Dr. N. Look down at yourself. Are you dressed in the same garments? Subject. Subject, we all seem to be dressed the same. We shimmer with light and we can change. Carla knows I like the way she looks. Dr. N, where are the others? Subject, Carla has taken me inside the temple school. I see a large library. Small gatherings of people are speaking in quiet tones at tables. It is sedate, warm, a secure feeling which is so familiar to me. Dr. N, do all these people appear as adult men and women? Subject, yes, there are more women in my group. Dr. N, why? Subject, because that's the valence they are most comfortable with right now. Note, the word valence used by this subject to indicate gender preference is an odd choice. Yet it does fit. Valences in chemistry are positive or negative properties, which, when combined with other elements, give proportion. Souls in groups may be inclined towards male and female personages or mixed. And and I'll just say that in this note here, the what's it called? The video I did with the introduction of the new series I'm doing with the snake, the eagle and the snake. I do go over a little bit of how, like, life energies, the Kundalini energy works, and it's very similar to the way they explain this within the spirit world as well. So just pointing that out. Dr. N. Okay, what do you do next? Subject, Carla. Carla leads me to the nearest table, and my friends immediately greet me. Oh, it's so good to be back. Dr. N, why are these particular people here with you in this temple? Subject, because we are all in the same study group. I can't tell you how happy I am to be with them once more. Subject becomes distracted with the scene, and it takes me a minute to get her started again. Dr. N, tell me how many people are in this library with you. Subject pauses with mental counting. About 20. Dr. N, are all 20 very close friends of yours? Subject, we are all close. I've known them for ages, but 5 are my dearest friends. Dr. N, every one of the 20 people are at about the same level of learning? Subject, almost. Some are a little further along than the rest. Dr. N, where would you place yourself in the group as far as knowledge? Subject, around the middle. Dr. N, as to learning lessons, where are you in the relations to your 5 closest friends? Subject, oh, we are about the same. We work together a lot. Dr. N, what do you call them? Subject chuckles. We have pet names for each other. Dr. N, why do you have nicknames? Subject, to define our essence. We see each other as representing earth things. Dr. N, what is your pet name? Subject, Thistle. Dr. N, and this represents some personal attribute? Subject, pause. I am known for sharp reactions to new situations in my rotations, life cycles. Dr. N, what is the entity you feel closest to called and why? Subject, soft laughter. Spray. He goes flat out in his rotations, dispensing his energy so rapidly it splashes in all directions, just like the water he loves so much on Earth. Dr. N, your family group sounds very distinctive. Now, would you explain to me what you and your friends actually do in this library setting? Subject, I go to my table and we all look at the books. Dr. N, books? What sort of books? Subject, the life books. Dr. N, describe them as best you can for me. Subject, they are picture books. Thick white edges, 2 or 3 inches thick, quite large. Dr. N, open one of the life books for me and explain what you and your friends at the table see. Subject, pause while the subject's hands come together and move apart as though she were opening a book. There is no writing. Everything we see is in live pictures. Dr. N. Action pictures, different than photographs? Subject, yes, they are multidimensional. They move, shift from a center of crystal, which changes with reflected light. Dr. N. So the pictures are not flat. The moving light waves have depth? Subject, that's right. They are alive. Dr. N. Tell me how you and your friends use these books. Use the books. Subject, well, at first it's always out of focus when the book is open. Then we think of what we want. The crystal turns from dark to light and gets into alignment. And then we see in miniature our past lives and the alternatives. Dr. N. How is time treated in these books? Subject, by frames, pages, time is condensed by the life books. Dr. N, I don't want to dwell on your past right now, but take a look at the book and just tell me the first thing you see. Subject, a lack of self-discipline in my last life, because this is what is on my mind. I see myself dying young in a lover's quarrel. My ending was useless. Dr. N, do you see future lives in the life book? We could look at future possibilities in small bites only, in the form of lessons. Mostly these options come later with the help of others. These books are intended to emphasize our past acts. Dr. N, would you give me your impression of the intent behind this library atmosphere with your cluster group? Subject, oh, we all help one another go over our mistakes during the cycle. Our teacher is in and out, and we do a lot of studying together and discuss the value of our choices. Dr. N, are there other rooms where people study in the building? Subject, no, this is for our group. There are different buildings where various groups study near us. Note, the reader may refer to Figure 1, page 89, Circle B, as an example of what is meant here. In the graph, clusters 3 and 7 represent infrequent group interactions, although they are in close proximity to each other in the spirit world. Continuing, Dr. N, are the groups of people who study in these buildings more or less advanced than those in your group? Subject, both. Dr. N, are you allowed to visit the other buildings where our soul studies? Subject, long pause. There is one which we go to regularly. Dr. N, which one? Subject, the place for the newer ones. We help them when their teacher is gone. It's nice to be needed. Dr. N, help them how? Subject laughs. With their homework. Dr. N, but don't the teacher guides have that responsibility? Subject, well, you see, the teachers are so much further along in development. This group appreciates our assistance because we can relate to them easily. Dr. N, so you do a little student teaching with this group. Subject, yes, but we don't do it anywhere else. Dr. N, why not? Why couldn't more advanced groups come to your library to assist you once in a while? Subject, they don't because we are further along than the newer ones, and we don't infringe on them either. If I want to connect with somebody, I do it outside the study center. Dr. N, can you wander about anywhere as long as you don't bother other souls in their study areas? Subject responds with some evasiveness. I like to stay around the vicinity of my temple, but I can reach out to anyone. Dr. N, I get the impression that your soul energy is restricted to this spiritual space, even though you can mentally reach out further. I don't feel restricted. We have plenty of room to go about, but I'm not attracted to everyone. I need to take a quick sip here. The statement about non-restriction cited in case 16 seems contrary to the boundaries of spiritual space seen by the last case. When I initially bring subjects into the spirit world, their visions are spontaneous, particularly as to the spiritual order and their place in a community of soul life. While the average subject may talk about having private spaces as far as living and working, none see the spirit world as confining. Once their superconscious recalls getting rolling, most people get rolling, most people are able to tell me about having freedom of movement and going to open spaces where souls of many learning levels gather in recreational atmosphere. In these communal areas, floating souls socially engage in many activities. Some are quite playful, when I hear of older souls, quote, teasing, unquote, the younger ones about what lies ahead of them. One subject puts it this way, quote, we play tricks on each other like a bunch of kids. During hide and seek, some of the younger ones get lost, and when we help them find themselves, unquote. I'm also told, quote, guests, quote unquote, can appear in soul groups at times to entertain and tell stories, similar to the troubadours of the Middle Ages. Another subject mentioned that her group loved to see an odd-looking character known as, quote, humor, unquote, show up and make them all laugh with his antics. Frequently, people in hypnosis find it hard to clearly explain the strange meanings behind their intermingling as souls. One diversion I hear rather often is of souls forming a circle of more fully unify and protect their thought energy. Always a connection with a higher power is reported here. Some people have told me, quote, thought rhythms are so harmonized they bring forth a form of singing, unquote. Gracefully, subtle dancing can also take place when souls swirl around each other in a mixture of energy, blending and separating in exotic patterns of light and color. Physical beings such as shrines, boats, animals, trees, or ocean beaches can be conjured up at the center of these dances as well. These images have special meanings to soul groups as planetary symbols, which reinforce positive memories from former lives together. This sort of material replication apparently does not resent sadness by spirits who long to be in a physical state again, but are a joyful communication with historical events that help shape their individual identities. For me, these mythic expressions by souls are ceremonial in nature, and yet they go far beyond basic ritual. Although certain places in the soul world are described as having the same function by subjects in superconscious, their images in each of these regions can vary. Thus, a study area described as Greek temple in this case is represented as a modern school building by another person. Other statements may seem more contradictory. For instance, many subjects mentally traveling from one location to another in the spirit world will tell me that the space around them is like a sphere, as we saw in the last chapter. But when they will add that to the spirit world is not enclosed because it is quote unquote limitless. I think what we have to keep in mind is that people tend to structure their frame of reference during a trance state with what their conscious mind sees and has experienced on Earth. I think this is a very good point and a very good distinction to remember. Quite a few people who come out of trance tell me there is so much about the spirit world they were unable to describe in earthly terms. Each person translates abstract spiritual conditions of their experience into symbols of interpretation which makes sense to them. Sometimes the subject will even express disbelief at their own visions when I first take them into a spiritual place. This is because the critical area of their conscious mind has not stopped dropping message units. People in trance soon adapt to what their unconscious mind is recording. When I began to gather information about souls and groups, I based my assessments of where these souls belonged on the level of their knowledge. Using only this criterion of identification, it was difficult for me to swiftly place a client. Case 16 came to me early in my studies of life in the spirit world. It was a significant one because during the session I was to learn about the recognition of souls by color. And this is going to be very interesting, y'all, and it's going to definitely play into so much of the research that I'm bringing. So continuing, before this case, I listened to my subjects describing the colors they were seeing in the spirit world without appreciating the importance of this information in relation to souls themselves. My clients reported about shades of soul energy mass, but I didn't piece these observations together. I was not asking the right questions. I was familiar with Kirlian, what is this? Kirlian photography and the studies, and the studies in parapsychology at UCLA, where researchers had indicated each living person projects their own colored aura in human form. Apparently, we have an ionized energy field flowing out and around our physical bodies, connected by a network of vital power points called chakras. Since spiritual energy has been described to me as a moving, living force, the amount of electromagnetic energy required to hold a soul on our physical planet could be another factor in producing different earthly colors. Now, this is just fascinating stuff, and this is exactly this is one of the reasons I'm reading this to you guys. I'll just say that. Let's see here. I want to highlight. There we go. So with case 16, I realized that radiated soul light visualized by spirits is not all white. In the minds of my subjects, every soul generates a specific color aura. I credited this case with helping me decipher the meaning of these manifestations of energy. Dr. N. All right, let's float outside your temple of study. What do you see around you or off in the distance? Subject. People, large gatherings of people. Dr. N. How many would you say? Subject. In the distance, I can't count. Hundreds and hundreds. There are so many. Dr. N. And do you identify with all these souls? Are you associated with them? Subject. Not really. I can't even see all of them. It's sort of fuzzy out there, but my gang is near me. Dr. N. If I could call your gang of about 20 souls, your primary cluster group, are you associated with the larger secondary body of souls around you now? Subject. We are all associated, but not directly. I don't know those others. Dr. N. Do you see the physical features of all these other souls in the same way as you did your own group in the temple? Subject. No, that isn't necessary. It's more natural out here in the open. I see them all as spirits. Dr. N. Look out in the distance from where you are now. How do you see all these spirits and what are they like? Subject. Different lights buzzing around as fireflies. Dr. N. Can you tell if the soul who work with each other, such as teachers and students, stick together all the time? Subject. People in my gang do, but the teachers kind of stick to themselves when they are not assisting in our lessons. Dr. N. Do you see any teacher guides from where we are now? Subject. Pause. Some, yes. There are much fewer of them than us, of course. I can see Carla with two of her friends. Dr. N. And you know they are guides, even without seeing any physical features. You can look out there at all the bright white lights and just mentally tell they are guides. Subject. Sure, we can do that, but they are not all white. Dr. N. You mean souls are not all absolutely white? Subject. That's perfect. That's partially true. The intensity aspect of our energy can make us less brilliant. Dr. N. So Carla and her two friends display different shades of white? Subject. No, they're not all. They aren't all at all. They aren't white at all. Subject. And Dr. N. I don't follow you. Subject. She and her friends are teachers. Dr. N. What is the difference? Are you saying these guides radiate energy which is not white? Subject. That's right. Dr. N. Well, what color are they? Subject. Yellow, of course. Dr. N. Oh, so all guides radiate yellow energy? Subject. No, they don't. Dr. N. What? Subject. Carla's teacher is Valers. Valers. He is blue. We see him sometimes. Nice guy, very smart. Dr. N. Blue? How did we get to blue? Subject. Valers shows a blue light. Dr. N. I'm confused. You didn't see anything about another teacher called Valers being part of your group. Subject. You didn't ask me. Anyways, he's not part of my group. Neither is Carla. They have their own groups. Dr. N. And these guys have auras, which are yellow and blue? Subject. Yes. Dr. N. How many other energy colors do you see floating around here? Subject. None. Dr. N. Why not red and green energy lights? Subject. Some are reddish, but no green lights. Dr. N. Why not? I don't know, but sometimes when I look around this place, it's lit up like a Christmas tree. Dr. N. I'm curious about Valers. Does every spiritual group have two teachers assigned to their cluster? Subject. It varies. Carla trains under Valers, so we have two. We see little of him. He works with other groups besides us. Dr. N. So Carla herself is student teaching as a less advanced guide? Subject, somewhat indignantly. She is advanced enough for me. Dr. N. Okay, but will you help me straighten out these color schemes? Why is Carla's energy radiating yellow and Valera's blue? Subject. That's easy. Valera's precedes all of us in knowledge, and he gives off a darker intensity of light. So, Dr. N. Does the shade of blue compared to yellow or plain white make a difference between souls? Subject. I'm trying to tell you. Blue is deeper than yellow, and yellow is more intense than white, depending on how far along you are. Dr. N. Oh, the luminosity of Valera's radiates less brightly than Carla, and she is less brilliant than your energy because you are further down in development? Subject laughs. Much further down. They both have a heavier and more steady light than me. Dr. N. And how does Carla's yellow color vary from your whiteness in terms of where you are going with your own advancement? Subject, with pride. I'm turning into a reddish white. Eventually, I'll have light gold. Recently, I've noticed Carla turning a little darker yellow. I expected it. She is so knowledgeable and good. Dr. N. Really? Then will she eventually take her energy level to a dark blue in intensity? Subject. No, to a light blue at first. It's always gradual as our energy becomes more dense. So, Dr. N. So these three basic lights of white, yellow, and blue represent the development stages of souls and are visibly obvious to all spirits. Subject. That's right, and changes are very slow. Dr. N. Look around again. Do you see all the energy colors equally represented by souls in this area? Subject. Oh no, mostly white, some yellows, and a few blues. Dr. N. Thank you for clarifying this for me. I routinely question everyone about their color hues while they are in trance. Aside from the general whiteness of the spirit world itself, my subjects report seeing a majority of other souls displaying shades of white. Apparently, a neutral white or gray is the starting point of development. Spirit auras then mix the primary colors of red, yellow, blue from a base of white. A few people see greenish hues mixed with yellow or blue. To equate what I have heard about soul energy with the physical laws which govern the color spectrum we see in the heavens is just supposition. However, I have found some similarities. The energy of radiated light from cooler stars in the sky is a red-orange, while the hotter stars increase from yellow to blue-white. Temperature acts on light waves that are also visible vibrations of the spectrum with different frequencies. The human eye registers these waves as band of light to dark colors. The energy colors of souls probably have little to do with such elements as hydrogen and helium, but perhaps there is an association with the high energy field of electromagnetism. I suspect all soul light is influenced by vibrational motion in tune with harmonious spiritual oneness of wisdom. That's right. Some aspects of quantum physics suggest the universe is made up of vibrational waves which influence masses of physical objects by interaction of different frequencies. That is also correct. Light, motion, sound, and time are all interrelated in physical space. I was hearing these same relationships applied to spiritual matter from my cases, which is fascinating. Need to quick sip. Eventually, I concluded both our spiritual and physical consciousness project and concluded both our spiritual and physical consciousness project and receive light energy. I believe individual vibrational wave patterns represent each soul's aura. As souls, the density, color, and form of light we radiate is proportional to the power of our knowledge and perception as represented by increasing concentrations of light matter as we develop. Individual patterns of energy not only display who we are, but indicate the degree of ability to heal others and regenerate ourselves. People in hypnosis speak of colors to describe how souls appear, especially from a distance, when they are shapeless. From my cases, I have learned the more advanced souls project masses of faster moving energy particles, which are reported to be blue in color, with the highest concentrations being purple. Now, this is a very important statement here, because the thing is that I'm going to go into this in maybe a post video or something, but the colors associated with the Kundalini are the exact same colors. Well, at least they're very similar. I'm going to say they're extremely similar. The yellow and oranges are the bottom. The blue is where the throat and the third eye kind of is, and the purple is your thousand-petaled lotus, that connection with that oneness, that God energy. And so, fascinatingly enough, it's the same thing here represented. And also fascinating enough, it makes you wonder whether or not the reason why people wore purple in those time periods is because they may have actually understood these concepts, and because a lot of these rulers consider themselves to be quote unquote godly, this in essence may be another representation of that idea. You're not going to find that. I don't think we're going to find that in any kind of ancient writings. However, this is interesting. As above, so below, right, guys? So, in the visible spectrum on Earth, blue-violet has the shortest wavelength, with energy peaking in the invisible ultraviolet. If color density in a reflection of wisdom is a reflection of wisdom, then the lower wavelength of white through yellowing emanating from souls must represent lower concentrations of vibrational energy. Figure 3, page 103, is a chart I have designed for the classification of souls by color coding as reported by my subjects. The first column lists the soul's spiritual state, or grade level of learning. The last column shows our guide status and denotes our ability and readiness to serve in that capacity for others, which will be explained further in the next chapter. Learning begins with our creation as a soul and then accelerates with the first physical life assignment. With each incarnation, we grow in understanding, although we may slip back in certain lives before regaining our footing and advancing again. Nevertheless, from what I can determine, once a spiritual level is attained by the soul, it stays there. In Figure 3, I show 6 levels of incarnating souls. Although I generally place my subjects into the broad categories of beginner, intermediate, and advanced souls, there are subtle differences between levels 2 and 4. For example, to determine whether a soul is starting to move out of the beginner stage at level 1 into level 2, I must not only know how much white energy remains, but analyze the subject responses to questions which demonstrate learning. A genealogy of past life successes, future expectations, group associations, and conversations between my subjects and their guides all form a profile of growth. Some of my subjects object to my characterization characterizing the spirit world as a place governed by a societal structure and organizational management symbolized by Figure 3. On the other hand, I continually listen to the same subjects describe a planned and ordered process of self-development influenced by peers and teachers. If the spirit world resemble one great schoolhouse with a multitude of classrooms under the direction of a teacher souls who monitor our progress, then it has structure. Figure 3 represents a basic working placement model for my own use. I know it has imperfections. I hope follow-up research by regression therapists in future years may build upon my conceptualizations with their own replications to measure soul maturity. This chapter may give the reader the impression that souls are as segregated by light level in the spirit world as people are in class and communities on Earth. Societal conditions on Earth cannot be compared with the spirit world. The differences in light frequencies measuring knowledge and souls all comes from the same energy source. Souls are fully integrated by thought. If all levels of performance in the spirit world were on one grade level, souls would have a poor system of training. The old one-room schoolhouse concept of education on Earth limited students of different ages. In spiritual peer groups, souls work at their own developmental level with other like them. Mature teacher guides prepare succeeding generations of souls to take their places. And so there are practical reasons why conditions exist in the spirit world for a system designed to measure learning and development. The system fosters enlightenment and ultimately the perfection of souls. It is important to understand that while we may suffer the consequences of bad choices in our educational tasks, we are always protected, supported, and directed within the system by master souls. I see this as the spiritual management of souls. The whole idea of a hierarchy of souls has been part of both Eastern and Western cultures for many centuries. Plato spoke of the transformation of souls from childhood to adulthood, passing through many stages of moral reason. The Greeks felt humankind moves from amoral to immature and violent beings over many lives to people who are finally socialized with pity, patience, forgiveness, honesty, and love. In the 2nd century AD, the new Christian theology was greatly influenced by Plotinus, whose Neoplatonist cosmology involved souls having a hierarchy of degrees of being. The highest being was a transcendent one, or God creator, out of which the soul self was born, which would occupy humans. Eventually, these lower souls would return to complete reunion with the universal oversoul. Yep, exactly. My classification of soul, and there's a lot of stuff of ancient evidence that will point to this statement that he just made. By the way, I'm going to be showing that. It's one of the main reasons I'm doing this channel. My classification of soul development is intended to be neither socially nor intellectually elitist. Souls in a high state of advancement are often found in humble circumstances on Earth. By the same token, people in the strata of influence in human society are by no means in a blissful state of soul maturity. Remember that, guys, okay? Just because things are going well, seem to be going well for people in this life, all of our quote-unquote elites and our quote-unquote controllers, you know, they might seem like they're having the greatest time in the world, but really, the amount of evil going on in these people is really insane. And when you really think about what that's probably doing to them inside of them and what they're going to have to deal with afterwards in terms of karma, it's not hard to forgive people who, have lost themselves. Anyways, I digress. Continuing. Often, just the reverse is true. In terms of placement by soul development, I cannot overemphasize the importance of our spiritual groups. Chapter 9 on beginner souls, level 1 and 2, will more closely examine how a soul group functions. Before going further, however, I want to summarize what I have learned about the principles of soul group assignments. Let's see here. Regardless of the relative time of creation, after their novice status is completed, all beginner souls are assigned to a new group of souls at their level of understanding. Once a new soul support group is formed, no new members are added in the future. There appears to be a systematic selection. There appears to be a systematic selection procedure for homogeneous groupings of souls. Similarities of egos, cognitive awareness, expression, and desire are all considerations. Isn't that interesting? These are all the things we all deal with here on Earth. Irrespective of size, cluster groups do not directly intermix with each other's energy, but souls can communicate with one another across primary and secondary group boundaries. primary clusters in levels 1 and 2 may split into smaller subgroups for study but are not separated from the integrated whole within a single cluster of souls. Rates of learning vary among peer group members. Certain souls will advance faster than others in a cluster group, although these students may not be equally competent and effective in all areas of their curricula. Around the intermediate levels of learning, souls demonstrating special talents, healing, teaching, creating, etc., are permitted to participate in specialty groups for more advanced work while still remaining with their cluster group. At the point where a soul's needs, motives, and performance abilities are judged to be fully at level 3 in all areas of self-development, they are then loosely formed into a, quote, independent studies, unquote, work group. Usually, their old guides continue to monitor them through one master teacher. Thus, a new pod of entities graduating into full level 3 could be brought together from many clusters within one or more secondary groups. When they approach level 4, souls are given more independence outside group activities. Although group size diminishes as souls advance, the intimate contact between original peer groups members is never lost. Spirit guides have a wide variety of teaching methods and instructional personifications depending on group composition. What time is it here? All right. So this will probably be the last chapter for today, and I will. Good Lord, I'm not even halfway done with this thing. Well, we'll see. We'll see. That'll be the last chapter for now. I may come back and do maybe another hour or two. We'll see what happens. If not, we'll definitely come back tomorrow and do a nice big fat chunk for you guys, okay? So let me take a quick sip here. Actually, let me see how long I've been going. Okay, almost 2 hours. That's not bad. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Chapter 8, Our Guides. I have never worked with a subject in trance who did not have a personal guide. Some guides are more in evidence than others during hypnosis sessions. It is my custom to ask subjects if they feel a discarnate presence in the room. If they do, this third party is usually a protective guide. Often a client will sense the presence of a discarnate figure before visualizing a face or hearing a voice. People who meditate a great deal are naturally more familiar with these visions than someone who never called upon his or her guide. The recognition of these spiritual teachers brings people into the company of warm, loving, creative power. Through our guides, we become more acutely aware of the continuity of life in our identity as a soul. Guides are figures of grace in our existence because they are part of fulfillment of our destiny. Guides are complex entities, especially when they are master guides. The awareness level of the soul determines to some extent the degree of advancement of the guide assigned to them. In fact, the maturity of a particular guide also has a bearing on whether these teachers have only one student or many under their direction. Guides at the senior level of ability and above usual work with an entire group of souls in the spirit world and on earth. These guides have other entities who assist them. From what I can see, every soul group usually has one or more rather new teachers in training. As a result, some people may have more than one guide helping them. The personal names my clients attach to their guides range from ordinary, whimsical, or quaint-sounding words to the bizarre. Frequently, these names can be traced back to a specific past life a teacher spent with a student. Some clients are unable to verbalize their guide's name because the sound cannot be duplicated, even when they see them clearly while under hypnosis. I tell these people it is much more important that they understand the purpose of why certain guides are assigned to them rather than possessing their names. A subject may simply use general designation for their guides, such as director, advisor, instructor, or, quote, my friend, unquote. One has to be careful how the word friend is interpreted. Usually when a person in trance talks about a spiritual friend, they are referring to a soulmate or peer group associate rather than a guide. Entities who are our friends exist on levels not much higher or lower than ourselves. These friends are able to offer mental encouragement from the spirit world while we are on earth, and they can be with us as incarnated human companions while we walk the roads of life. One of the most important aspects of my therapeutic work with clients is assisting them on a conscious level with appreciating the role their guide may play in life. These teacher entities edify all of us with their skillful instruction techniques, ideas as claim Ideas we claim as our own may be generated by a concerned guide. Guides also can comfort us during trying periods in our lives, especially when we are children in need of solace. I remember a charming remark made by a subject after I asked them when she began seeing her guide in this life. Quote, "Oh, when I was daydreaming," unquote, she said, continuing, quote, "I remember my guide was with me on my first day of school when I was really scared. She sat on top of my desk to keep me company and then showed me the way to the bathroom when I was too afraid to ask the teacher," unquote. The concept of personalized spiritual beings goes far back in antiquity to our earliest origins as thinking human beings. Anthropological studies at the sites of prehistoric people suggest their totemic symbols evoked individual protection. Later, some 5,000 years ago, as city states arose, official deities became identified with state religions. These gods were more remote and even generated fear. Thus, personal and family deities assumed great importance in the day to day life of people for protection. A personal soul deity served as a guardian angel to each person or family and could be called upon for divine help during a crisis. This tradition has been carried down into our cultures of today. We have two examples at opposite ends of the United States. Omakua is a personal god to Hawaiians. The Polynesians believe one's ancestors can assume a personal god relationships as humans, animals, or fish to living family members. In visions and dreams, Aumakua is an interesting uh, Aumakua can either assist or reprimand an individual. In northeastern America, the Iroquois believe a human's own inner spiritual power is called Orenda, which is connected to a higher personal Orenda spirit. The guardian is able to resist the powers of the powers of harm and evil directed at an individual spirit. The concept of soul watchers who function as guides is part of the belief system of many Native American cultures. The Zuni tribes of the Southwest have oral traditions in their own mythology of godlike beings with personal existences. They are called, quote, the makers and holders of life paths, unquote, and are considered the caretakers of souls. Fascinating. There are other cultures around the world which also believe someone other than God is watching over them to personally intercede on their behalf. I think human beings have always needed anthropomorphic figures below a supreme God to portray the spiritual forces around them. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the reason why we have what some people call polytheism. Um, it kind of makes sense, right? When people pray or meditate, they want to reach out to an entity with whom they are acquainted for inspiration. It is easier to ask for aid from a figure which can be clearly identified in the human mind. There is a lack of imagery with a supreme God which hinders a direct connection for many people. Yeah, I would say that's a hard thing for people who get started in meditation, is that they don't really know what to focus on, and the idea of God in a lot of ways can be very distant to many people's minds. Continuing, regardless of our diverse religious preferences and degrees of faith, people also feel if there is a supreme God, this divinity is too busy to bother about their individual problems. People often express an unworthiness for a direct association with God. As a result, the world's major religions have used prophets who once lived on earth to serve as our intermediaries with God. Possibly because some of these prophets have been more elevated to divine status themselves. They are not personal enough anymore. Yeah. I say this without diminishing the vital spiritual influences all the great prophets have had on their followers. Millions of people derive benefits from the teaching of these powerful souls who incarnated on earth as prophets in our historical past. And yet, people know in their hearts, as they have always known, that someone, some spiritual entity, individual to them, is there, waiting to be reached. I have the theory that guides appear to people who are very religious as figures of their faith. I would agree with this theory, actually. Because let's just, think about this in terms of the mind and the spirit. I mean, how the mechanism, your soul, your mind, i.e., the way that you perceive and experience things, is definitely going to affect how you experience, how you see things in this life. But as we have seen, obviously, in the spirit world as well, which is interesting. Which kind of leads to the idea that, like, when you die, you don't die at all. You're, everything who you are and what you think you are and all these other things still are there with you, even though you get a better understanding of who you are once you shed that bodily skin. Let's just say. Let's see here. Continuing. There was a case on a national television show where the child of a devout Christian family suffered a near death experience and said she saw Jesus. When asked to draw the crayons what she saw, the little girl drew a featureless blue man standing with a halo of light. My subjects have shown me how they depend upon and make use of their spiritual guides during life. I have come to believe we are their direct responsibility, not God's. These learned teachers, well, so what's interesting, I think, about the comment he just made, I just want to stop and make a comment here, is that he says here, I have come to believe the we are direct responsibility, not God's, right? But when you're looking at the structure of this whole spirit world, right, what is clear, I'm not sure why he makes this statement, but then again, wrote this a long time ago. So he does have a sequel, which goes into a lot more detail from this book. But one of the things I find interesting is that, yes, that might be true, that the guides we are the guides' responsibilities, but in essence, we are all responsible for ourselves, and then also that makes a point that how we're responsible for within ourselves and our own soul's development affects all the other souls around us. So we're all in this together, right? And that this idea that the guides responsibility is theirs and not God's. I mean, I think in a lot of ways every single soul is heading in the exact same direction. We're all just in different levels, so to speak. So continuing. These learned teachers remain with us over thousands of years to assist in our trials before, during, and after countless lives. I noticed that, unlike people walking around in a conscious state, subjects in trance do not blame God for their misfortunes in life. How about that? More often than not, when we are in the soul state, it is our personal guide who takes the brunt of any dissatisfaction. I am often asked if teacher guides are matched to us or just picked at random. This is a difficult question to answer. Guides do appear to be assigned to us in the spirit world in an orderly fashion. I have come to believe their individual teaching styles and management techniques support and beautifully integrate with our permanent soul identity. For instance, I have heard about younger guides whose past lives include include overcoming particularly difficult negative traits, being assigned to souls with the same behavior patterns. It seems these empathetic guides are graded on how well they do in their assignments to effect positive change. You see what I'm saying? For my comment I was making earlier. All guides have compassion for their students, but teaching approaches vary. I find some guides constantly help their students on Earth, while others demand their charges work out lessons with little overt encouragement. The maturity of the soul is, of course, a factor. Certainly, graduate students get less help than freshmen. Aside from the development level, I'd look at the intensity of individual desire as another consideration in the frequency of appearance and form of assistance one receives from his or her guide during life. As to gender assignments, I find no consistent correlation of male and female subjects to masculine or feminine appearing guides. On the whole, people accept gender portrayed by their guides as quite natural. It could be argued that it is because they have become used to them over aeons. If relative time is males or females, rather than the assumption that one sex is more effective than another between specific students and teachers. Some guides appear as mixed genders, which lend support to souls being truly androgynous. One client told me, quote, "My guide is sometimes Alexis or Alex, dropping in and out of both sexes depending on my need for male or female advice," unquote. And it is interesting that we have in these ancient religious structures and let's say religious ideas, like for instance, I'm going to get into this, but like you have this idea of this, entity that then split itself, which then became the universe, but that split becomes female, male. But there's no, it's always androgynous. Like they don't, obviously, gender and all that stuff makes no difference whatsoever in the spirit world at all. Not the way people make a big deal about it here, which in my opinion is a hindrance and a blockage and something that will keep people from moving forward, not just in their lives here on earth, but spiritually. It's a distraction, and I wish people would learn that, but I digress. Continuing, from what I can determine, the procedure for teacher selection is carefully managed in the spirit world. Every human being has at least one senior or a higher master guide assigned to their soul since the soul was first created. Many of us inherit a newer secondary guide later in our existence, such as Carla in the previous chapter. For want of a better term, I have called these student teacher junior guides. Aspiring junior guides can anticipate the beginning of their training near the end of level 3 as they progress into the upper intermediate stages of development. Actually, we begin our training as subordinate guides long before attainment level 4. In the lower stages of development, we help others in life as friends, and between, you hear this? In the lower stages of development, we help others in life as friends, and between lives, assist our peer groups associated with counseling. Junior and senior teaching assignments appear to reflect the will of master guides who form a kind of governing body, similar to a trusteeship over the younger guides of the spirit world. We will see examples of how the process of guide development works in chapters 10, 11, and 11, which cover cases of more advanced souls. Do all guides have the same teaching abilities, and does this affect the size of the group to which we are assigned in the spirit world? The following passage is from the case file of an experienced soul who discussed this question with me. Before we get into case 17, I need to take a sip. Case 17. Dr. N. I'm curious about teacher assignments in the spirit world in relation to their abilities to help undeveloped souls. When souls progress as guides, are they given quite a few souls to work with? Subject, only the more practiced ones. Dr. N. I would imagine large groups of souls needing guides could become quite responsibility for one advanced guide, even with an assistant. Subject, they can handle it. Size doesn't matter. Dr. N. Why not? Once you attain Oops. Once you attain competency and success as a teacher, the number of souls you are given doesn't matter. Some sections, clusters, have lots of souls, and others don't. Dr. N. So if you're a senior in the blue light aura, class size has no relation to assignment because you have the ability to handle large number of souls? Subject. I didn't exactly say that. Much depends on the type of souls in a section and the experience of the leaders. In the larger sections, they have help too, you know. Dr. N. Who does? Subject. The guides you are calling seniors. Dr. N. Well, who helps them? Subject. The overseers. Now, they are the real pros. Dr. N. I have heard them also called master teachers. Subject. That's not a bad description for them. Dr. N. What energy color do they project to you? Subject. It's purplish. Oh, God. Note, as significant in Figure 3 in the last chapter, the lower ranges of level 5 radiate a sky blue energy. With advanced maturity, this aura grows more dense, first to a muted midnight blue, like cobalt, and finally to a deep purple, representing the total integration of level 6 Ascended Master. Dr. N. Since guides seem to have different approaches to teaching, what do they all have in common? Subject. They wouldn't be teachers if they didn't have a lot of, they have love of training and desire to help us join them. Dr. N. Then define for me, you hear that? They wouldn't be teachers if they didn't have love of training and a desire to help us join them. Again, we're all going in the same direction. So if we can all get up off of our ego trips and realize that each one of these conflicts we have in our lives, there's a purpose to it. And if we act like a bunch of idiots like we always seem to do all the time, then we're not going to go anywhere. We're like hamsters spinning in a wheel. Anyways, continuing. Dr. N. Then define for me why souls are selected as guides. Take a typical guide and tell me what qualities that advanced soul possesses. Subject. They must be compassionate without being too easy on you. They aren't judgmental. You don't have to do things their way. They don't restrain by imposing their values on you. Dr. N. Okay, those are things guides don't do. If they don't over-direct souls, what are the important things they do as you see it? Subject. They build morale in their sections and instill confidence. We all know they have been through a lot themselves. We are accepted for those who are individuals with the right to make our own mistakes. Dr. N. I must say, I have found souls very loyal to their guides. Subject. That's why. Because they never give up on you. Excuse me. Dr. N. What would you say is the most important attribute of any guide? Subject. Without hesitation, the ability to motivate you and instill courage. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. My next case provides an example of the actions of a still incarnated guide. This guide is called Oa. He represents the qualities of a devoted teacher reported by the last case. Evidently, his early assignments as a guide involved looking after the subject in case 18 in a direct fashion, and his methods apparently have not changed. My client was stunned once he recognized her guide's latest incarnation. Oa made his first appearance as a guide in my client's past about 50 BC. He was described as an old man living in a Judean village which had been overrun by Roman soldiers. Case 18 was then a young girl orphaned by a Roman raid against local dissidents. In the opening scene of his past life, she spoke about working in a tavern as a virtual slave. As a serving girl, she was constantly beaten by the owner and occasionally raped by Roman customers. She died at age 26 of overwork, mistreatment, and despair. This subject made the following statement from her subconscious mind about an old man in her village. Quote, I worked day and night and felt numb with pain and humiliation. He was the only person who was kind to me, who taught me to trust in myself, to have faith in something higher and finer than the cruel people around me, unquote. Later in the superconscious state, this client detailed parts of other difficult lives where Owa appeared as a trusted friend. And once as a brother, in this state, she saw these people were all the same entity and was able to name this soul as Owa, her guide. There were many lives when Owa did not appear, and sometimes his physical contact was only fleeting when he came to help her. Abruptly, I asked if Owa might possibly be in her life now. After a moment of hesitation, my subject began to shake uncontrollably. Tears came to her eyes, and she cried out from the vision in her mind. Case 18. Subject. Oh, Lord, I knew it. I knew there was something different about him. Dr. N. About who? Subject. My son. Owa is my Brandon. Dr. N. Your son is actually Owa? Subject. Yes, yes, laughing and crying at the same time. I knew it. I felt it right from the day I delivered him, something wonderfully familiar and special to me. More than just a helpless baby. Oh. Dr. N. What did you know the day he was born? Subject. I didn't really know. I felt it inside. Something more than the excitement of a mother feels at the time of her firstborn. I felt he came here to help me. Don't you see? Oh, it's so fantastic. It's true. It's him. Dr. N. I was working on calming my client before continuing because her excited wiggling around is about to carry her over the side of the office recliner. Why do you think Owa is here as your baby son, Brandon? Subject, quieter now, but still crying softly. To get me through this bad time, with hard people who won't accept me. He must have known I was in for a long period of trouble and decided to come to me as my son. We didn't talk about doing this before I was born. What a wonderful surprise. Note, at the time of this session, my client was struggling to gain recognition in a highly competitive business. She was also having marital difficulties at home, partly due to being the major wage earner. I have since learned she is divorced. Dr. N, do you sense something unusual about your baby after you took him home? Subject, yes. It started at the hospital, and this feeling never left me. When I looked into his eyes, he soothes me. Sometimes I come home so worn out, so tired and beat down. I am short-tempered with him when the babysitter leaves, but he is so patient with me. I don't even need to hold him. The way he looks at me is so wise. I didn't fully understand what this meant until now. Now I know. Oh, what a blessing. I wasn't sure if I should even have the baby. Now I see it all. Dr. N, what do you see? Subject in a firm voice. As I try to advance in my profession, people are getting harder, not accepting what I know and can do. My husband and I are having trouble. He puts me down for pushing too hard, wanting to achieve. Owa, Brandon, is here to keep me strong so I can overcome. Dr. N, and do you think it is all right we discovered your guide? Your guide is with you as Brandon in this life? Subject, yes. If Owa didn't want me to know that he decided to come into my life, I wouldn't have come to see you. It wouldn't have been in my mind. This exceptional case represents the emotional intoxication a subject feels when an in-life contact is made with their guide. Notice the role Owa chose did not infringe upon the most typical role usually taken by a soulmate. He did not come through her spouse and never has in any of her past lives. Certainly soulmates take other roles besides spouses, but an incarnating guide does not normally take a role which might transgress between two soulmates working on their lives together. This client's soulmate happens to be an old flame from high school. Based upon all the information I was able to gather, Owa seems to have moved into the level of a junior guide in the last 2,000 years. He may possibly graduate into the blue level of a senior guide before his client is qualified herself to rise from white to yellow energy aura. Regardless of the number of centuries this takes, Owa will remain as her guide, even though he may never incarnate again with her in a life. Do we ever catch up to our guides in development? Eventually, perhaps, but I can say I have not seen any evidence of this in my cases. Souls who develop relatively fast are gifted, but so are the souls who assist them. It is not uncommon to find guides working in pairs with people on Earth, each with with their own approaches to teaching. In these cases, one is dominant, although the more experienced senior guide may actually be less evident in day-to-day activities of their charges. The reason for this spiritual arrangement is in tandem because one of the pair is either in training, such as a junior guide under a senior, or the association is so long standing between the two guides, as with senior to a master, that a permanent relationship has evolved. The senior guide may have acquired his or her own clusters of souls, which is still monitored by a master overseeing a number of soul groups. Teams of guides do not interfere with each other in or out of the spirit world. I have a close friend whose guides illustrate how two teachers working together complement each other. Using the individual's case is appropriate because I have observed the way the person's two guides interact in various life circumstances. My friend's junior guide appears in the form of a kindly, nurturing Native American medicine woman called Kwan. Dressed simply in a deerskin sheath, her long hair pulled back, Kwan's soft face is bathed in vivid light during her appearances, when she is called. Kwan provides a vehicle for insight and understanding events and the individuals associated with those events which are troubling to my friend. Kwan's desire to lighten the load of the rather difficult life my friend has chosen is tempered by a challenging male figure named Giles. Giles is clearly a senior guide who may be close to being a master in the spirit world. In this capacity, he does not appear nearly as often as Kwan. When Giles does come down to my friend's higher consciousness, he does so abruptly. Here is a sample of how a senior guide operates differently from one of junior status. Case 19, Dr. N. When you are in deep reflection over a serious problem, how does Giles come to you? Subject laughs. Not the same as Kwan, I can tell you. Usually he likes to hide a little at first, behind a shadow of blue vapor. I hear him chuckling before I see him. Dr. N. You mean he first appears as a blue energy form? Subject. Yes, to hide himself a bit. He likes to be secretive. It doesn't last long. Dr. N. Why? I don't know. To make sure I really want him, I guess. Dr. N. Well, he shows himself. What does Giles look like to you? Subject. An Irish leprechaun. Dr. N. Oh, then is he a small man? Subject laughs again. An elf figure, tangled hair all over his wrinkled face. He looks a mess and moves constantly in all directions. Dr. N. Why does he do that? Subject. Giles is a slippery character. Impatient, too. He frowns a lot while he paces back and forth in front of me with his arms clasped in back of him. Dr. N. And how would you interpret his behavior, Giles? Subject. Giles is not dignified like some guides, but he is very clever, crafty. Dr. N. Could you be more specific as to how this conduct relates to you? Subject. Strained. Giles has made me look upon my lives as a chess game with the earth as the board. Isn't that interesting? It's just like Shakespeare's "The world is a stage and we are all its players" kind of thing. Certain moves bring certain results, and there are no easy solutions. I plan, and then things go wrong during the same game in my life. I sometimes think he lays traps for me to work through on the board. Dr. N, do you prosper with this technique of your advanced guide? Has Giles been a help to your problem solving during the game of life? Subject pause. More afterwards, here in the spirit world, but he makes me work so damn hard on Earth. Dr. N, could you get rid of him and just work with Kwan? Smiles ruefully. It doesn't work that way here. Besides, he's brilliant. Dr. N, so we don't get to choose our guides? Subject, no way, they choose you. Dr. N, do you have any idea why you have two guides who approach your problem so differently in the way that they help you? Subject, no, I don't, but I consider myself very fortunate. Kwan is gentle and steady with her support. No, the embodiments of Native Americans who once lived in North America make powerful spiritual guides for those of us who have followed them to live in this land. The large number of Americans who report having such guides lends support to my belief that souls are attracted to geographical settings they have known during earlier incarnations. Continuing, Dr. N, what do you like most about Giles' teaching methods? Subject, pensively, Oh, the way he, well, trifles with me, almost mocking me to do better during the game and stop feeling sorry for myself. When things get especially rough, he prods me and keeps me going, insisting I use my abilities. There is nothing soft about Giles. Dr. N. And you feel this coaching on Earth even when you and I are not working together? Subject, yes, when I meditate and go in myself or during my dreams. Dr. N. And Giles comes when you want him? Subject, after some hesitation. No, although it seems as though I have been with him forever. Quan does come to me more. I can't just grab hold of Giles in any situation I want, unless what I've been doing is on a really serious. Uh, unless what I have unless what I have going on is really serious. He is elusive. Dr. N. Sum up your feelings about Quan and Giles for me. Subject. I love Quan as a mother, but I wouldn't be where I am without Giles' discipline. They are both skillful because they allow me to benefit from my mistakes. No, and this is an important thing, guys, too. You can bring this kind of knowledge right here in our own lives. We should be skillful to allow people to, help them realize, our loved ones, the mistakes of our loved ones and the people around us that we want to help, but don't know how. So it's an extremely difficult thing to learn. Continuing, these two guides are a cooperating team of instructors, which is standard procedures for those people who have two guides. In this case, Giles enjoys teaching karmic lessons by the Socratic method. Providing no clues in advance, he makes sure problem solving on major issues is never easy for my friend. Quan, on the other hand, provides comfort and gentle encouragement. When my friend comes to me for a hypnosis session, I am aware that Quan remains in the background when Giles is on board and active. Giles is a caring guide, as all guides are, but without a trace of indulgence. Adversity is allowed to build to the absolute limits of my friend's ability to cope before solutions suddenly begin to unfold. To be honest, and this is another good point, guys. This happens. This is a lesson I learned a long time ago. But in spiritual advancement, if you're anywhere you are, it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what religion you come from. Let's just point out here that it's important um, that the situations that unfold in our lives, um, we tend to hate and we react to them terribly, which usually doesn't mean that we make good decisions in those kinds of situations. Which is why it's really good to have that meditative state when you're not gonna freak out about stuff. As a just quick example, when my wife and I got into it, not she came home in a super grumpy mood, and I was in a absolutely ecstatic mood because I had meditated and just had a wonderful session, and she was going off on this thing, and I just looked at her after she said some fairly insulting things to me, and I smiled to her and just continued doing what I was doing, and then 5 minutes later she was fine. But you know, I'll just say 5, 10 years ago, I would have been right in the mix. I mean, I still do here and I still do here and there, but it's been such a difference for me in over the past years, I mean, 10, 15 years of my life. Such a progression. That, I can sit here and have somebody I love insult me and say nasty things to me, and it doesn't affect me because I can conceptualize it in their mind, and I can see that they're being swept up by their emotions and everything else, that they don't even really pay attention to the things they say and do, which gives me an opportunity to bestow an instant forgiveness upon them and not get upset. It is an important lesson to learn in life, and it's a hard one. But people will never learn that lesson if they constantly run away from their problems. And no matter how small that problem is, small problems turn out to be big problems, and sometimes big problems turn out to be small problems. So, a lot of people think that they're convinced one way or the other, and all I can say is always spend time thinking about those things before you make conclusions that might lead you in the wrong direction. So, continuing, to be honest, I see Giles as a wicked taskmaster. This view is not really shared by my friend, who is grateful for the challenges offered by his complex teacher. Oh, another thing, too, is that Giles, in a lot of ways, is like the Norse god Loki. He is a trickster. And the funny thing is when you look at a lot of these mythologies, or you look at things like, these old Aesop's fables and things like that, they're always the tricksters that are involved in these stories that usually cause problems, but by causing the problems and by creating the situations, every one of these fables that has these kinds of characters in it always brings a moralistic ending, and a realization at the end of these stories, which only was brought out because the trickster himself, brought that out with his shenanigans, let's just say. So continuing, what is the average spiritual guide like? In my experience, no two guides are the same. These dedicated higher entities give me the impression of having attitudinal swings towards me from one session to the next, and even within the same session with a client. They can be cooperative or obstructive, tolerant or disobliging, evasive or revealing, or just flat out unconcerned with anything I do with a subject. I have great respect for guides because these powerful figures play such an important part in our destiny, but I must admit they can frustrate my inquiries. I find them enigmatic because they are unpredictable in their relations with me as a facilitator. Early in this century, it was common for mediums to working with people in hypnosis to call any discarnate entity in the room as a quote unquote control because they acted as the director of communications on the spiritual side for the subject. It was recognized that a spiritual control, whether a guide or not, had energy patterns which were in emotional and intellectual and spiritual attunement with the subject. The importance of a harmonious energy pattern between facilitators and these entities was also known. If a control is blocking my investigations with a client, I search for the reason why this is happening. With some blocking guides, I must fight for every scrap of information, while others give me a great deal of latitude in a session. I never forget that guides have every right to block my approach to problems with souls under their care. After all, I have their people as my subjects for only a short while. Frankly, I would much rather have no contact with a client's guide than work with one who might assist me at one point and then block the rhythm of memory in the next portion of a session. I believe a guide's motivation for blocking information goes far beyond resisting the immediate psychological direction of a therapy session is taking. I am constantly searching for new data on the spirit world. A guide who lends support to a free flow of past life memories from one of my subjects may balk at my far reaching questions about life on other planets, the structure of the spirit world, or creation itself. This is why I am only able to collect these spiritual secrets in fragments from a large body of client information reflecting the discretion of many guides. I also feel that I am receiving assistance from my own spiritual guide during communications with subject and other guides. Now, this is another interesting part of it, too, and you'll notice this as this book goes on. But there's very little information about the creation of the universe or life, and there's really no information about what happens when these purple masters ascend. So again, it's all the same thing, right? I just wanted to throw that out there. Um, Occasionally, a subject will express dissatisfaction with his or her particular guide. Oh, well, you know what? Let me just say something too about what I just said. Uh, Whoa, what did I just do? Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. So, you know, let's see here. I'm trying to find where I was reading that. You know what? I'll just continue. Occasionally, a subject will express dissatisfaction with his or her particular guide. This is usually temporary. At any time, people are capable of believing their guides are too difficult and not working in their best interest, or not paying enough attention to them. A subject once told me that he had tried for a long time to assign another guide. He said, to be assigned to another guide. He said, quote, "My guide is stonewalling me. She doesn't give me enough of herself," unquote. The man told me his desire for a change in guides was not honored. I observed that he spent considerable time alone without much group interaction after his last two lives because he refused to deal with his issues. He projected anger towards his guide for not rescuing him from bad situations. Our teachers really don't get perturbed with us to the point of alienation, but I notice that they have a way of making themselves scarce when disgruntled students have avoid real problem solving. Yeah, that's. Guides only want the best for us, and sometimes this means they must watch us endure much pain to reach certain objectives. hmm Guides cannot assist in our progress until we are ready to make the necessary change in order to take full advantage of life's opportunities. We do have reason to be fearful. Do we have reason to be fearful of our guides? In Chapter 5, with Case 13, we saw an obviously younger soul who expressed some trepidation right after death about meeting the guide, Clodes, for debriefing. Typically, this concern does not last. We may feel chagrined over having to explain to our guides why goals were not attained, but they understand. They want us to interpret our past lives, so we will have the benefit of assisting in the analysis of mistakes. My clients express all sorts of sentiments about their guides, but fear is not among them. On the contrary, people are more worried about being abandoned by spiritual advisors during difficult periods in their lives. Our relationship with guides is one of student and teachers rather than defendants and judges. Our personal guides help us cope with the separateness and isolation with every soul inherent at physical birth, regardless of the degree of love extended by our family. Guides give us an affirmation of self in a crowded world. People want to know if their guides always come whenever they call for help. Guides are not consistent in the manner in which they choose to assist us because they carefully evaluate how badly they are needed. Excuse me. I am also asked if hypnosis is the best way to get in contact with one's guide. Naturally, I lean towards hypnosis because I know how potent and effective this medium can be to obtain detailed spiritual information. However, hypnosis by a trained facilitator is not convenient on a daily basis, where meditation, prayer, and perhaps channeling with another person would be. Self-hypnosis is a form of deep meditation, is an excellent alternative and may be preferred by those who have a fear of being hypnotized by others or don't want the interference of a second party in their spiritual life. And that deep meditation, like, it takes quite a long time for a person starting in meditation to really reach that deep meditation. But I'm not saying that as a discouragement. People should definitely do this because when you hit that deep meditation, it is powerful. And you'll never stop meditating again. I'll tell you that much. So continuing, regardless of the method used, we all have the capacity to send out far-reaching thought waves from our higher consciousness. Every person's thoughts represents a mental fingerprint to guides marking who and where we are. During our lives, especially in periods of great stress, most people feel the presence of someone watching out for them. We may not be able to describe this power, but it is there nonetheless. Reaching our soul is the first step on the ladder of finding our higher power. Can't agree with that more. All lines of mental communication we use to reach a Godhead are monitored by guides on this step. They too have their guides further up the ladder. Remember, if you guys, I'll just stop here because this whole story of Jacob's ladder, and I brought this up in the introduction of the Snake and the Eagle series that I just started. But, Jacob explains something very similar here. How he sees angels going up and down this ladder in the heaven, that kind of thing. Continuing, the entire ladder serves as one unbroken conduit to the source of all intelligent energy, which each rung being a part of the whole. It is essential for people to have faith that a prayer for help will be answered by their own higher power. This is why guides are vitally important to our spiritual and temporal lives. If we are relaxed and in a state of concentrated focus, an inner voice speaks to us, and even if we didn't initiate the message, we should trust what we hear. And I will just say this: I would never have started this channel had this little inner voice of mine in my meditations over the last, I'd say, 3 years, been telling me this over and over and over and over again. And last year, I finally said, okay. Continuing, national surveys by psychologists indicate 1 person in 10 admits to hearing voices which are frequently positive and instructional in nature. It is a relief for many people to learn their inner voices are not the hallucinations associated with the mentally ill. Rather than something to be worried about, an inner voice is like having your own resident counselor or on-call. More often than not, these voices are those of our guides. Guides assigned to different souls do work together, relaying urgent mental messages for each other. People unable to help themselves in critical situations may find counselors, friends, and even strangers coming to their aid at just the right moment. The inner strength which comes to us in our daily lives does not arrive as much as by a visual pictures of actually seeing our guides as from the feelings and emotions which convince us we are not alone. People who listen and encourage their inner voice through quiet contemplations say they feel a personal connection with an energy beyond themselves, which offers support and reassurance. If you prefer to call this internal guidance system inspiration or intuition, that is fine, because the system which aids us in an aspect of ourselves as well as higher powers. And both intuition and inspiration are increased exponentially by meditation and that opening up of these spiritual chakras in your body, as you start to unravel your physical self and start to realize your spiritual self. That this is a, it's like you grow into it. Both inspiration and intuition become extremely powerful, and in many ways, it will surprise you. So continuing, during troublesome times in our lives, we have the tendency to ask for guidance to immediately set things right. When they are in trance, my clients see that their guides don't help them solve all their problems at once. Rather, they illuminate pathways by the use of clues. This is one reason why I am cautious about client blocking during hypnosis. Insight is best revealed with a controlled pace relative to each person. A concerned teacher may not want all aspects of a problem uncovered at a given point in time for his or her student. We vary in our ability to handle revelations. Yes, absolutely. When asked for help from your higher spiritual power, I think it is best not to demand immediate change. Our success in life is predicated on planning, but we do have alternative paths to choose from to reach certain goals. It's also very important to remember, everybody. This world, we do live in a quantum world. This is, everything around you is nothing but a wave field of possibilities and probabilities. When seeking guidance, I suggest requesting help with just the next step in your life. When you do this, be prepared for unexpected possibilities. Have the faith and humility to open yourself up to a variety of paths towards solution. Yes, and I want to stop also and say this, is that in my own experience and in my own development, the further along you go, the less you really worry about things. But also, when problems arise, like for instance, I don't care about money at all. I mean, I don't, and it drives my wife crazy sometimes. But when things happen and I have to, make some moves, I don't worry about it. I place it in my mind and say, yeah, well, I have this problem. Let's see how we can solve it, and it just kind of floats around there until solutions reveal themselves. And I can tell you, in the last 5 years, every single time I have needed a job or I needed some kind of thing, I again do not worry about it. I don't attach myself to, you know, the um, the outcome of thinking about getting money. I just think I have an issue. I need to solve it, and boom. Without it, and trusting in the fact that the universe works in a certain way, these opportunities come to me. But because I'm aware of the fact that this is happening, I use them to great effect in my life. Beforehand, it was all just straight chaos, and I could never, if you can't see these opportunities flowing out in front of you, then you may miss them, and that could be a part of the fact that, like, not when I say you, I just mean people in general. If people are too enclosed in their physicality and the let's just say the materialistic ideals of this life that we all live, and unfortunately the materialistic dogma that our society has shoved so far down our throats that has just ruined generations of people, and and it's really a shame. But like, imagine if we all considered ourselves, teachers and students of each other. We helped each other out. What if this world could be closer to in the way that the spirit world is? And it could be if people change their minds on how they perceive reality. So, just continuing. After death, we do not experience sadness as souls with the same emotional definition as grief felt in physical form. Yet, as we have already seen, souls are not detached beings without feelings. I have learned those powers who watch over us also feel what I call a spiritual sorrow when they see us making poor choices in life and going through pain. Certainly, our soulmates and peers suffer distress when we are tormented, but so do our guides. Guides may not show sorrow in orientation conferences and during soul group discussions between lives, but they keenly feel their responsibilities towards us as teachers. In chapter 11, we will get the perspective of a guide at level 5. I have never found a person who is a living grade 7 or 6 or master guide as a subject. I suspect we don't have a lot of these advanced souls on Earth at any one time. Most level 6s are much too involved with planning and directing from the spirit world to incarnate any longer. From the reports of level 5s I have had, it would seem that level 6 has no new lessons to learn, but I have a hunch a still incarnating soul at level 5 may not know all the esoteric tasks involved with master level entities. While in once in a while during a session with a more advanced soul, I hear references to an even higher level of a soul than level 6. These entities, whom even the masters report, are in the darkest purple range of energy. These superior beings must be getting close to the Creator. I am told these shadowy figures are elusive but highly venerated beings in the spirit world. Excuse me. The average client doesn't know if spiritual guides should be placed in a less than divine category or considered lesser gods because of their advancement. There is nothing wrong with any spiritual concept as long as it provides comfort, is uplifting, and makes sense to each individual. Although some of my clients have the tendency to consider guides godlike, they are not God. In my opinion, guides are no more or less divine than we are, which is why they are seen as personal beings. In all my cases, God is never seen. People in hypnosis say they feel the presence of a supreme power directing the spirit world, but they are uncomfortable using the word God to describe a creator. Perhaps the philosopher Spinoza said it best with these words, quote, God is not he who is, but that which is, unquote. That's good. Well, we're going to get into Spinoza pretty soon. Every soul has a spiritual higher power linked to its existence. All souls are a part of the same divine essence, generated from one oversoul. This intelligent energy is universal in scope, so we all share in divine status. If our soul reflects a small portion of the oversoul we call God, then our guides provide the mirror by which we are able to see ourselves connected to this Creator. And that is a really beautiful sentiment, I think. You guys, I think I'm going to have to end it here. Let's see here. There we go. But yeah, I think that's a beautiful sentiment. I think that's quite an interesting kind of last comment there at the end of this paragraph, basically stating that, God does exist. Every single one of us and all these things are all part of this divine power. So, when this intelligent energy in the universal scope, and so when we all share in the divine status, which is nice. I think that's a more unifying way of looking at religious thought, God, all these different things, and in my opinion, it's so much more universal. And imagine if there wasn't such strife with the I'm right, you're wrong, that type of thing, and it was really more about what are the things that show us that any of these ideas work? What are the fruits of these things? And in my experience within my own spiritual journey itself, this book came to me at just the right moment, and it connected with me in so many ways that I thought it was important that I did a reading on this before we continued on with much of the other research, because there's, even with the color scheme that they talked about, I'll be looking at this in the future, but the entire color scheme of the Kundalini chakras they're almost the same. When I read that originally, I was like, wow, how in the world is that even possible? But, but then it begs the question, you guys, and like I said earlier, it begs the question about the purple dye, the purple color that the Phoenicians were so famous for making, and why people were so crazy about having it, and these emperors of Rome who considered themselves Augustine or holy or godlike, which is interesting, and of course, purple is their adornment or whatever else. but within the physical type of thing, it's almost like they're taking this idea and they're driving it into the physical part of the world and in life. Whereas I think originally that was meant to be more of something that had to do with the recognition of that higher spiritual state. And we'll look into that a lot more into the near future with some more detailed stuff. But I wanted to get going on this audiobook to sort of just get started on that. So I'll probably not be back today. I'll probably be back tomorrow. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me. If you guys liked the video and these kind of audiobooks, please hit the like button. This is a crazy book, and if you guys definitely want to share this with people, or any of the other videos or whatever else that the audiobooks I'm doing, please do. It's just one of those things where the couple people that I've shared this with that have open minds, it really helped them to deal with certain things in their lives, and I think that's what it's all about. I mean, that's why I'm doing this channel. I want to help. I want to help any and all of you out there that are listening. So my goal is to do it for this channel is to help you connect and find that inner love inside of you that will blossom into so much more than you could have ever imagined. Things come to you when you let go of the physical parts that you're so attached to in this life, and the things that you worry about. It's funny, those things that you worried about and you run after, they just kind of naturally come at you afterwards. It's a wonderful effect of getting connected with your soul and yourself and that pure essence of what you are. And so, with that, I will extend my grand love and affection to all of you. And until the next video, which will be tomorrow. So, peace.